The Hurling Show, brought to you in association with Torpy. Torpy are leading hurling into a new future with Bamboo, a revolutionary hurley created using their unique engineered hurling performance know-how. Already being used by many inter-county players, Torpy's Bamboo is highly sustainable, offers players greater striking distance and a more consistent balance every time, without compromising on natural feel. Check them out on the Torpy website and in the link below, and enter the promo code OurGame to get yourself 10% off. Hello and welcome to the Hurling Show. Myself, Shane Stapleton, Michael Verney, and his hair with me as ever. How are things, Michael? Are you looking forward to this?
Yeah, like, Jez, they say Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year, but it doesn't get much better than this week. Like, Jez, it's just, you'd be just bubbling with enthusiasm all week, and like, there's so much to break down over the next, God knows how long we'll be talking over the next while, because there's that much to break down.
There is, and there's loads of comments flying in already, and keep them going, as we always say. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to that button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Helping build that up the whole time is great to grow the channel, so please do that. And if you want to get this on Patreon, to get the audio podcast, the only place you can do it is patreon.com/OurGame for $5 a month. Hey, before we start talking about the All-Ireland final, we have to look at last night's under-20 All-Ireland. So for the second time in something like 6 weeks, Cork are All-Ireland champions at that level. They could win the minor this Saturday night and do the hat-trick, really. Like, the perfect hat-trick would be incredible. They beat Galway comprehensively, 4-19 to 2-14 last night. Padraig Power was brilliant. He scored 1-5, and even Jeffrey Linsky, you know, he's had a great run, being in charge of the underage teams with Galway. I believe he stepped down after the game. But 3 minors, 2015, 17 and 18, and a Leinster under-20 crown. That's not bad going. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Galway, but I'm sure his name will be in the mix, Michael.
No, I'll definitely be in the mix, without yeah. He's like, he couldn't have done much more with those Galway underage teams in recent years. And it's amazing, though, how things can flip from minor even to under 20, let alone senior. Like, look at where Cork have come in the last couple of years. Winning 2 under 20s in the last few weeks is it's unbelievable turnaround. And you kind of get the feeling maybe that things are just building absolutely perfect for them. It's funny in a county when things are on a roll, the senior team could go and do something maybe that people don't think they're capable of, just with that swell of optimism, momentum behind them as well.
Yeah, and there's comments flying in here, and you mightn't, I don't think you can fully expand on this one, but the hair is very Hasselhoff today. Han Verney, any thoughts on Ric Flair's trending on Twitter? We cannot talk about that. We can.
The one comment I make about Ric Flair trending on Twitter is, woo!
The anti-Limerick agenda is fierce in the media, but the boys are very fair to the team. Let's be real here. Yeah, there's a couple of people just wondering, will we hop on the anti-Limerick media train today? It's fairly outrageous. A couple of more comments. John O'Sullivan, Rebels a boo. Galway under-20s aren't fit for purpose, says Flash. I thought that they just played hurling from the 90s at times, which is funny because none of them were born in that era. But there are a couple of those Cork lads, like, they're just such in great physical shape. They didn't have Alan Connolly or Shane Barrett because they're both involved with seniors. And still, they brought on subs who looked better than some of the starters for the Galway team. Now, maybe Galway could have played a slightly better brand of hurling. They were firing balls at 100 miles an hour straight up the line for an attacker. I mean, all the defender has to do is give a slight nudge and the attacker is in bits. But the other thing is that those Cork attackers look ready to step up to senior. Maybe some of their backs too, like Jack Cahalan. He looks like, Conor Cahalan has hit the ground running with the seniors, and Jack looks really, really good. He scored 1-1. Padraig Power, he scored 1-5. Brian Hayes scored 1-2. I will say that crucial goal that Padraig Power scored in the second half, I thought Brian Hayes threw up the ball and caught it. And I think the referee didn't see it, Johnny Murphy, and I don't think a replay was shown afterwards to prove it. But I definitely saw it, and I tweeted it, and a few other people agreed as well. So that sort of thing can turn a game. They had it back to 3. So it'll be interesting to see who Galway bring through. They obviously need to bring through a few players, but Cork, as Billy Hedigan tweeted at me last night, 11 of the players playing for Cork last night are underage again next year. The conveyor belt is moving along nicely.
It's absolutely overflowing, isn't it? Imagine, Kieran Kingston in the position that he's in, they could get potentially massive almost like a bonus All-Ireland because people are saying it's too early. The funny thing about, it being a year too early, it was too early for Limerick in 2018 as well. Then everybody said nobody could take Galway down. It was too early for Cork in 1999. It was too early for Clare. Maybe not too early, but it was because they didn't win an All-Ireland after that or get back there. But it's never too early. It's never too early when you have talent, and they'll go into that final with, very little fear. And as I said, when things are going really, really well in a county, people are capable of doing spectacular things.
Yeah, plenty of comments flying in here. Flash says, word on the street is the bamboo turns Stapleton into Horgan. It's going to take more than that. I'm going to need to change a few more limbs. Never mind just the hurley attached to me. Shinrone Abu, Verney. What do you think of that?
No, thanks, Dave. No. Bura Abu all day, every day.
Do I see a bit of grey coming through the hair? Well, I definitely have a small bit coming. Do you?
Yeah, the problem is...
Freeman.
The problem is the longer you let it grow, the longer the grey hairs get. But sure, listen, sometimes you just have to embrace it, don't you?
Yeah, Raymond Gilburn says, can we start with at least an hour on the situation in Tipperary?
Raymond, there was no reason for Tipperary to be in this conversation today, and now you've given him an excuse to talk about Tipperary. But that'll be the last time Tipperary are mentioned in this conversation today. Definitely, if it's anything to do with me anyway.
Yeah, don't worry. Look, this is Cork and Limerick. It's going to be, we've talked about Cork and Galway, the under 20s. We'll have a brief little word on the minor All-Ireland, which is again Cork and Galway. Verney's obviously dusting down just over the window there.
I'm just making sure there's no sun coming in, because I looked quite orange in that last picture, and as you can see, I'm very, very pale.
Yeah, maybe you're taking the same pills that Trump is on. Hard to know. We've got a comment coming in here, going straight for you, like plenty of the comments do. Years of Verney pulling no punches on Cork, and let's reflect back to last year when you absolutely cut the backs off the Leesiders many times over. Now they've turned it around. He won't give us the credit. Said Kilkenny would choke Cork out. Then after the fact said Cork beating Kilkenny wasn't a scalp. Richard Good has you over a barrel there.
One thing I would say, Richard Good, is the reason you develop such a strong opinion on a county is because I was all in on Cork in 2019. All in. I thought they'd win the All-Ireland, and I thought they were the team to beat Limerick. And this was before the championship even started. And turns out they were one of the teams to beat Limerick. But they just my Cork bubble was burst that day in Croke Park against Kilkenny. And it takes you tend to go harsher on a county then when you feel like they've let you down, or they've let your opinion, or I thought I saw something, and maybe then you doubt that whether you saw anything at all. Now, what I thought I saw a couple of years ago is coming back again. I'll give them plenty of credit. But when we dissect the game, we'll get our honest assessments of the game as we dissect it a bit more. But it's not that I didn't have time for Cork. Loads of time for Cork. It's just that it's like you're like a jilted lover. When someone lets you down or something like that, or wrongs you, you find it very, very hard to forgive them.
You've lots of experience in that.
Don't we all?
Yeah, Fantasy Gaelic Football says crunch time in the fantasy hurling. The Verney versus Saint head-to-head is over, as the team went rudderless there for a while because I forgot to update them. What about the diehards leaderboard? Have a look at that. Drummond Inch's Shane Hassett is only 20 points ahead of Marina Fasella. So we'll see how that one goes ahead. Do you know what I noticed there this morning? Some goats have broken loose down in Cork City. Here's a bit of footage of it here. And I'm wondering, is this Patrick Horgan with his team on the captain's run? I think it might be. That's down at St. Luke's. I spent a summer living down in Cork. Jeez, it must be the guts of 18 or 19 years ago now. And it wasn't too far from St. Luke's Cross. So I know that area. But
by Jesus, if Cork win Sunday evening, there'll be goats, there'll be sheep, there'll be cows, there'll be all sorts of wild animals running around Cork City. I can tell you that.
Yeah, there definitely will. We've so much to go through in this show. And to be honest, we've been building up for it for the past few days because we're so excited about it. We will have the tactics board up on screen. We'll be trying to dissect these teams every which way and let us know what you think. The comments are flying in as they always do. Cork can't let the county fall back like it has for the past 16 years. For a county of its size, it's not acceptable. And that's absolutely true, no doubt about that. You'd imagine that they'll always be looking to push for an All-Ireland. Where's the championship haircut, Michael?
I only get a championship haircut for my own championship. So that's the week after next, and I'd say I'm probably due for then.
Okay. let's see, a couple of more comments in here. If Cork don't win a senior All-Ireland in the next 4 years, they've failed. Maybe they'll win one in the next couple of days. 2013 was the most open All-Ireland in living memory, says DMC. Even Dublin could have won it. Cork lost their chance, but that team was only average. That's interesting, yeah. I don't think that Cork team was the best Cork team we've ever seen. And then even like you go ahead the following year, they end up getting trounced in an All-Ireland semi-final, and then maybe the wheels start to come off over the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. Like, as regards like form and backing up form, like you'd have to say outside of 2018, like Clare didn't back up that form. So you'd have to kind of agree with that. I definitely go along with that, yeah. But this team looks like a team, like age profile wise, outside of Hoggy, this is a Cork team that's going to be there for a long, long time, and they're going to have a load of new blood coming in at different stages over the next 5 years probably.
Yeah, I see a few comments coming in about Dublin or Cork's route back to getting to the All-Ireland final. Has there not been a bit of an overreaction to Cork's performances this year, says Dahi Fox? Barely got over an average Kilkenny team that won a handy Leinster championship. Limerick unbeaten in the championship in 2 years.
It is a fair point when you look down through it. I rate Clare quite highly, but they only beat Clare a score. They obviously drew a Kilkenny in normal time, beat them by 4 points in extra time. They beat a Dublin team that, to me, that they should always be beaten. So you're looking at, in a way, if you're looking at what they have beaten, but they've gotten it. I think that can kind of blind you as well. They've gotten better with every game in this championship. They're playing much better now. There was a stage. There was a stage in the Kilkenny game where I thought they were going to run away with. They didn't, but it might have been a better lesson than winning that game handy. I think they're steeled an awful lot better now. Mentally, sure, their resolve is an awful lot better. The fact that they were able to overcome so many things going wrong at the end of the Kilkenny game, flick a switch and just power on in extra time, I think is hugely promising. The parallels between them and Limerick in 2018, I think are clear for all to see, to be honest, which I honestly do. And everybody thought Galway were unstoppable coming into 18. Me and you both included, who both came down on the Galway side before that game. And then all of a sudden Limerick win and there's a dynasty that follows. Like, a good few things have to go right for Cork for that to happen on Sunday, and Limerick are probably going to have to be a bit off, but it's definitely not beyond the realms of possibility. And it's not a 50-50 final, but it's not like the landslide. I don't think it's the landslide that people are talking about. People are saying that Limerick are going to hold them at arm's length by 6 or 7. I just don't see that.
No, definitely not. I see this as a 50-50 game, and I haven't fully decided.
Do you honestly see it as a 50-50 game? Yeah?
Oh, I definitely do. Like, I 100% do. I know you've rewatched it there. Is it today or definitely this week? The Munster semi-final, 222 to 117. Limerick won that day, and we know that Patrick Horgan missed the penalty, had a quiet game. Not looking to hammer him over it, but he had a quiet game. Robbie O'Flynn did, Harnedy did, Puckhouse didn't go their way, and still they were quite close throughout a lot of that game. They missed some awful chances that would have brought it back to a score. And then, as they did at the end of the first half, Limerick just found a way to kick on late on. But interestingly enough, I was speaking to former dual player for Cork, Dennis Walsh, the most recent man to pick up both medals, obviously Teddy McCarthy as well. But he was talking about Owen Cadigan, the fact that maybe he could emulate that this weekend. But he was also talking about how Cork have found a nice different mix of things and almost about how they've changed somewhat over the last while. So I'll just play a little clip with him. He joined me with Joe Quaid, and you can find that interview on the playlist on OurGame.
The Cork team at the minute this year in particular, now they have got that mix between aggression, skill, pace, and playing for the team versus maybe doing your individual thing. They've got that mix right, but they had to get that right. The penny had to drop because you weren't going to beat the likes of Limerick with a bit of individual flair here and there. You're not going to do that. Like the game on Sunday, the water breaks, in my opinion, while it's well documented with Paul Kinnerk bringing out the tactics board at the water break, but I think the water break is going to help Cork now, this Cork team on Sunday, because you can get to the water break and refocus and see where you're at. And I think that'll help them. But like, if you go back to 18, Limerick were 6 points down, and I think that game is the reason why Limerick are so good now, and in that they scored point by point by point. They scored 7 points in the trot to overall Cork overhaul them. So it wasn't a case of there was one high ball dropped into the goal and they got a lucky goal and they got a lucky freeze or anything like that. It was point by point. And I think in the memory bank, in Limerick's memory bank, they kind of said, right, that's a justification for all the work we've done. That's what we can do. That's what we are capable of. And they've gone on and shown that. Now, I think I'd agree with Joe there. Cork are eventually trying to get that right as well and work the process and the whole lot.
Yeah, they definitely are. They've definitely, and we'll have a clip from Tommy Walsh, former Kilkenny hurler and great, up in a couple of minutes to talk about their change since then. But like that water break was a point that Dennis Walsh made there, and you spoke with Paul Kinnerk, who's the Limerick coach and member of the backroom team, about that earlier on in the year, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I did, Jay, earlier on the year, because it was something that was obviously, there's pictures put up on Twitter, and it was just, people were almost fascinated by it. It's a simple enough tactic that, teams have used, particularly in recent years. But he just said the focus on it was interesting. A few friends got a bit of fun out of it, all right. A tactic sport has always been part of our process from trainings to matches. A simple case of supporting a verbal message with a visual. Players have likely been involved in an intense play immediately prior to the water break, and the visual enhances the chances of a message being gathered. And that's as simple as it is, to be honest with you. It's just you can, rather than hearing something, if you see it, it can people learn different ways. Some people learn by doing, some people learn by seeing, some people learn by listening. So it's different ways of getting a message across. And like, if you look at it, Frank Roach did a piece in the paper today about Limerick's moving quarter, and it was called Kylie's quarter pounder, which I absolutely loved. That's just genius. But invariably, since the water breaks came in, there has been a quarter where they have killed off a game. Against Cork, it was the quarter. It was the second quarter just before half time. Against Waterford the last day, it was the second quarter again. Against Tipperary, it was the third quarter. So I think it's massive for Cork that they don't allow Limerick to get a run on them during that times. And I was chatting to John Myler yesterday, and I think he thought I was trying to set him up, but I asked him, like, if he was manager, what would he do to stop it? And he said, well, I let it happen in 2018 when we were 6 up, but he said if he had it back, he would have maybe brought on Conor O'Sullivan as sweeper and maybe just tighten things up, and particularly at that time not conceded a goal. But it does happen so quickly that other teams find it very, very hard to, I suppose, stem that blood loss. But they are well forewarned now at this stage. So maybe having a little different tactics in play or different ways of just refocusing the minds if Limerick get a run on you or 2 or 3 points. Because if that run turns into 6 like it was against Waterford in a row, the game is essentially over. You just can't allow them to get up that head of steam.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Actually, just back to the whole visual aids that you talked about earlier on, I would definitely find that a massive advantage. Like we've started to see more and more at club level also that the tactics boards are brought out the side of the field. I find them very, very useful, and I've seen several different managers use them at this stage. But also even go back to the early days, when you and I would have been underage, and I'm sure even underage teams now are doing it. They definitely are, where in the dressing room beforehand, you actually line out as the 15. It's a real life tactics sport. And I actually, even once or twice, even now, the way if you're doing a training match, an in-house training match, and it's just been all of a sudden the 2 15s are picked, and you go either side, you have a quick little chat, the 2 teams. I like to now and again suggest, lads, can we just line up here? Because I just want to be able to stand at, let's say I'm at number 3, and be able to say, look, for the puck outs, this is what I want you to do. I want you to feck out to the corners, get out there, wing backs, get all the way out there, midfield, come looking here, whatever it might be. I think the visual aid is absolutely massive, and some teams are better at using that than others. You have to avail of every little trick that's going. And maybe that's just a little edge where the likes of Dublin have gotten, where the likes in hurling or in football I'm talking about especially, and the likes of Limerick, where they can get that extra little bit. By the way, comment in here for Porter. What a great sideline team that Cork have. Kingston, the Rock O'Sullivan, Craggy as in Donald O'Grady, I'd imagine, and Gerard Cunningham. And Gerard Cunningham's son Ben was involved in the under-20s there the other night. She's a big man. coming there, and probably he's going to be looking to push on in the next couple of years.
Just on that, Shane, just on that, on the management, it's mad now. If you look at it, you have Kieran Kingston, who's obviously an inter-county manager, second time around. You have Donal O'Grady as like an advisor of sorts, who's an All-Ireland winning manager. You
manage both teams.
Yeah, manage both teams. You have Ger Cunningham, who's obviously managed Dublin and has been involved with Cork before, and you have Dermot O'Sullivan, who's coach and selector before. On the Limerick side, you have John Kiley, who's a two-time All-Ireland winning manager, under 21 winning manager, Paul Kinnerk, who's managed 3 different All-Ireland successes with two non-traditional counties. You have Alan Cunningham, who's been involved in an All-Ireland with the Piercing and 2 All-Irelands at Limerick as well. And you have Donal O'Grady, who's probably... This is one of his first kind of gigs almost since he finished up, but he's been involved in an All-Ireland already, as coach. And obviously, there's probably someone I'm forgetting there as well. I think there's a Considine as well involved there. They have a load of principals actually involved in their backroom team. Kiley, Cunningham, and Considine is a principal as well. So they have 3 principals and a teacher in Kinnerk in their backroom team. But they're like, that's the caliber, no more than what we mentioned with Tip before. You have basically inter-county managers as coaches, as selectors now of most of the teams that are looking to win Liam McCarthy every year. Sometimes
can that be a negative? Too many cooks spoil the broth?
It can be if the relationship or the boundaries of what they're doing isn't probably clearly defined, and they can all have different messages. But I think if they're all on the same page, there's an awful lot of expertise. If they're all on the same page and you know who the boss is, I think it's okay, and I think there's an awful lot to be got from it.
Yeah, and we, like in previous years, it's always been a case of once the players enter the 4 white lines, that's kind of it. With the water breaks, that's no longer the case. Like half time, you can get a message across, and even Myler there, he's saying if he could go back, maybe he'd have brought in Conor O'Sullivan as the sweeper. Fine, that's a fair point. That might have worked, but without being able to like kind of take stock for a second, even as a management team, you know, the way that you generally see them take a quick little huddle between the management group and then they go over to players because they need a second to take stock of the situation. Maybe an injury will allow you to do that traditionally over the years, but generally you don't really have that time, because a lot of time the backroom team, you might have somebody over doing Mayor Ishka in one corner, somebody over in another corner with the Hurleys or whatever. Now, I know they have Hurley carriers as well, but you might have lads stationed in different areas. So having a little conference for a split second wasn't that possible. So we're in a new era where you can do that 4 times in a game.
I tell you what as well, though, is shocking important now more than ever with the minute you have at the water break. Your management team, you need to be able to distill messages unbelievably quickly. You need to be able to have a conversation unbelievably quickly. You know, that person that you know and that I know that is just a waffler and takes so long to get to the point. You do not need them in a management team when time is of essence. You need someone who's straight to the point. We need to do this, this, and this, and then you can go and do it. But I've never been involved with a team before, and there was 3 or 4 of us management team, and I think for half time we ended up speaking for about 10 minutes, and then coming into the dressing room, and it's almost like the messages and conversations we had, we didn't even have enough time to get them across to the team almost.
Yeah, that's often the way. And then even like players, when their blood is up, especially trying to get a message through to a player of a tactical change when the game is on, he's sprinting around and he's worried about his man and he's too tired to be listening to your nonsense anyway.
Yeah.
Versus now he can come in for a second, take stock, take a drink of water. Okay, now what are you trying to say to me there? Because you've been on the field and the manager's roaring at you, and it's the last thing you want to hear because you've enough to be doing.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to hear it straight away as well, because you need to calm down. You need to bring yourself back down to neutral even if it's only for 30 seconds.
Yeah, Talaman GA says, has Will O'Donoghue been Limerick's most important player? Reminds me of Baker 95-98, ran the show with his powerhouse hurling. Interestingly, O'Donoghue wasn't on the team a couple of years ago, and all the Piercing players kind of struggled to get into the team that year, other than Mike Casey eventually, because they were probably involved in that club run and missed all the league games where the team was kicking on. But it's a fair measure of him that he was able to break into a winning team. And I know they ultimately lost the All-Ireland semi-final in 2019, but that said a lot, because very few players have been able to break into this team. Like Graham Mulcahy's maybe taken a step out, and now you've got, Seamus Flanagan is in there the whole time, and
Peter Casey's
in there. But otherwise, it's been very, very tough. O'Donoghue gets no respect, too busy fawning over Barron, who he has marked out of the game 3 times in the space of less than a year. But I think that is kind of a collective thing, that Watford are under pressure in so many positions that somebody like Barron, it's very hard for him to stand out.
Hey, Flash, you're not watching enough. We've been fawning over Will O'Donoghue. Like, I would nearly call him for a national inquiry last year. We didn't get an all-star. So, no, and I do, with the earlier question, I do think he's one of their most important players. I think he allows so many other lads to flourish. And as well as that, like, he's still able to take a point. He took 2 points against Cork. He's still able to take a score from distance. I think he's absolutely huge for Limerick. And even Darragh O'Donovan's in better form. He's closer to 2018 form now in games as well. So, like, I think they've got one of the best midfields in the game. They just go about their business not even that quietly, because they're so in your face at times, but just so efficiently. And Will O'Donoghue in particular nearly always does the right thing on the ball.
Yeah, I think we had him both in our team of the year last year, and we've both had him in our early All-Stars team for this year. So we definitely talk about him plenty. Was interesting to see Ryan O'Donoghue do all the talking for Mayo during the water breaks instead of James Horan. Player driven should be the ultimate goal for any good management team. That was interesting. I noticed that because he's only in there a couple of years. He played in the All-Ireland last year, but there's so many experienced players like Lee Keegan, Paddy Durkin, Diarmuid O'Connor is the previous captain. Obviously, Aidan O'Shea was taken off after 48 minutes or whatever it was. And it's tougher to actually lead a chat when you've been taken off. You know the way you just kind of you feel a bit awkward about doing that. But there's so many different aspects to talk about. And keep those comments coming in. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Now, I spoke to Tommy Walsh this week as well, former Kilkenny hurler. He had plenty to say about Cork, Limerick, even Brian Cody's future and a few other things, how he likes to prepare for an All-Ireland and the types of hurley he likes to use. Believe it or not, he'd actually get a hurley on he'd get a new hurley on a Friday and play with him on a Sunday in an All-Ireland final. I couldn't get my head around that. But
madness, madness. Yeah. Johnny Pilkington used to land out to Brian Gatz, a local hurley maker, and he'd just pick up something. He'd just pick up something. Yeah, pretty much. And it's funny, Shane, you say I would never call it I always call it a hurl. That's what we always call it down here. But when I'm talking with someone who makes hurls, a hurl maker just doesn't sound right to me. So I'd always say a hurley maker. And that's just to be clear for anybody who tries to take a pop off me and tells me that I'm going to the dark side by calling it a hurley. I am definitely not. It is a hurl all day, every day.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, here's what Tommy Walsh had to say about Cork and Limerick.
There was 8 points in the month's semi-final. It probably wasn't, an 8-point victory. If you go and look at it, was 7 to 10 points on 35 minutes. So coming up to half-time was a draw match. Limerick scored 2-1 before half-time. And that cushion for the whole of second half. I think for the journey they've been on, I think Cork have went from strength to strength to be a clear team that were very difficult to beat under Brian Lohan. Brian Lohan is instilled toughness, a kind of a team spirit, and hard for any team to beat. That's obviously Kelly. And let's not forget, only for the Cork goalkeeper Patrick Collins, Cork wouldn't be here. They wouldn't even earn semi-final because he made an unbelievable save from Tony Kelly, and it was on his more difficult side to save it as well. So they've had some different players that have stepped up at different times, and you'll often go and look at All-Ireland champions. And where did they win it? There will be many points and many moments throughout the season. Like you go back to when Limerick won the All-Ireland 2018. You could go back and look at Nicky Quaid's save on Harnedy and the flick in the semi-final. Cork go on to win it, you could be by Pat Collins' save. But there are many other moments as well. Mark Coleman has many last-ditch efforts in the semi-final against Kilkenny. But where they've come from, I think, is mentally, the semi-final will give them huge confidence that they're now able to mix it. They're now able to hook and block on the big day when it matters most. Like the likes of Harnedy, it wasn't all for them in the final. They're getting in their body, they're getting in the hook blocks. O'Connor wasn't really in the game. Like the Welsh was doing a fantastic job on Jack O'Connor. He went out wing forward suddenly then, and the game took on a new lease of life. So I think to have that mentality of dealing with setbacks, Tim O'Mahony, Robert Downey. Downey was under pressure on Billy Ryan. Suddenly in extra time, he was nearly man of the match. Tim O'Mahony, a great game, but then suddenly he did, made that mistake. I wouldn't even say it was a mistake. Kilkenny did very well to take the ball back off him. And he was just, continuing with the game plan of Cork. He wasn't going to drive it down the field. But he had to deal with that of losing the ball and Kilkenny getting the equaliser. So I think mentally they've gone from strength to strength, Cork.
Yeah, they definitely have. And Michael Verney, just bringing you back in there. There has been a huge change in Cork since that Munster semi-final, as far as I'm concerned. They lost it by 8 points, and I'm just looking at some of my stats here, some big blobs of text going on here, but it's as I go back through it and I see some of the points that I make, that Cork had just one shot and scored from play in the last 10 minutes of the game. Like, they had a huge amount of wides early on in the fourth quarter. They brought it back to just 4 points, and in their next 4 shots, they were all wides. A couple of frees from Patrick Horgan. I think some of those might have been really long range. Darragh Fitzgibbon had a wide, and Owen Cadigan had a wide. He was standing all on his own in the middle of the field. Remember, he picked up possession, and I don't think he necessarily wanted to be shooting. He had a great game man-marking Tom Morrissey out of it. Tom Morrissey was taken off at that stage of the game. And just drove a wide. And, Limerick had a couple of wides of their own. Like, let's not forget that.
A couple, they had 20.
Yeah. But sorry, I mean in that particular period.
Yeah.
But like, Cork had a chance to get back into it. But then in the last 10 minutes, as I said, they had just one shot from play. But they were trying to force goals. Now, this is something we've seen time and again in games this year, where teams are allowed to bloat their winning scoreline because the other team is going for a goal. It's totally understandable. We all get it. But like, I would think that Cork have changed a nice bit since then. Right, so just even if you're looking in terms of personnel compared with the All-Ireland semi-final where they played against Kilkenny, Damon Cahalane didn't start. I mean, he's had injury issues. Owen Cadigan the same. He didn't start. He came on for Limerick, who got injured. Limerick had notionally started as a midfielder in that Munster semi-final. We'll get to the tactics board and talk about his role. Also, I think Rob Downey has come in and really established himself, albeit Billy Ryan did give him a bit of bother with his pace, and John Kiley will have noted that. But other than that, I think Cork have changed a nice bit since then. They're not the exact same proposition. And as Tommy Walsh said in that clip there, and you can get the full show on the OurGame playlist, like, they have kicked on an awful lot in terms of belief, you would imagine. Like, getting over the line against Clare, it doesn't matter how you get over the line. Like, your goalkeeper makes a big play. Yeah, that's fine. Like, I mean, Nicky Quaid made the big play in 2018. Sometimes it comes against the head, a play that probably shouldn't work out for you. And it did. And that's the thing that gives you the belief to kick on. And beating Kilkenny after extra time, I don't think it could have worked out better for belief and the fact that so many lads got game time. So to me, Cork are on another level compared with the Munster semi.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. And when you get a big result like that, particularly when things went wrong, it just it increases your belief in what you're doing as well. And it's grand having a game plan that you're following or whatever. You do believe. But, if you're, defeated, or you let a lead slip, or you lose, a big game and things go against you in the last couple of minutes, it does knock your confidence a small bit. On the flip side of that, when you do get through these really sticky situations, you're thinking, like, what we're doing is working here. This is working. We've beaten everyone we played this year apart from Limerick. We think we're going to be a different team when we play Limerick this time around. And as you say, if Hoggy's penalty hadn't been saved by Nicky Quaid, and Hoggy was probably having one of his most off-colour days in a Cork jersey, they would have been up by 5 at that time. All of a sudden, they ended up, what did they end up down at half-time? They ended up 6 down at half-time. The game kind of totally spinned. Just something, Shane, actually, I wanted to say, because looking back at the game, the Limerick-Cork game last night, and I thought this was really interesting, and it was almost like Limerick's game management. So, Peter Casey was after getting a point to put them 2-21 to 1 set, or not, sorry, Darragh Donovan was after getting a goal in the 37th minute to put them 3 points up, and 2 minutes had been allocated for injury time, and Tim O'Mahony hit a wide from a sideline, and Nicky Quaid would have realised with the time that they had an opportunity to try something maybe that they would not otherwise try. So time was up, and it was very reminiscent of the Dubs, and they go put a long puck out down, and rather than Kyle Hayes holding his position, he bombs forward, takes the chance. What's the worst that's going to happen? The whistle is going to be blown while he's standing at the opposition 45. That is literally the worst that's going to happen. The other team don't have a chance to build back up. That's not what happens. Galan gets the ball in his hand, plays a lovely ball into Hayes. He knows he has a chance to do something, and the whistle is going to blow, and he strikes a goal. And I just thought that was really smart. The Dubs have always done that. They get the ball in injury time. They're nearly looking at the clock. There's 4 minutes allocated of injury time. They have the ball at 3:30. They wait until the 4th minute to take their shot. And it's almost like a free shot because the opposition can't come back and counter. Whereas maybe more inexperienced teams would have the ball, with 30 seconds to go. They'd take a shot, maybe miss it, be a bit deflated, and the other team could go down and they could be the ones going in. So I just thought that was really smart from a Limerick point of view. But from a Cork point of view, there's a lot of things that went wrong in that game against Limerick that they'll think they have had time to eradicate and rectify. And definitely their game plan and their style of play is a lot more exaggerated now than it was when they played Limerick 7 weeks ago. It's going to be on Sunday. And they've honed it an awful lot more. And as I come back to my initial point, I think they believe in it a lot more as well.
And I'm sure Limerick feel that they're back to their best form. Like during the league, they were very, very erratic. They hammered Cork out the gate in one of those games, but I don't know how seriously Cork were taking that game, and they were going to try working the puck out from the back no matter what. But the last couple of games, the way Limerick took over against Tipperary, I mean, I think like you're definitely come away from that game thinking how they completely overran Tipperary once they had their best 15 out in the field. And once they really went at Tipperary, just fairly crushed them in that third quarter. Then obviously against Waterford, look, it hurt. They controlled that game for most of it in the All-Ireland semi-final, won by 11, never really in much danger. But I want to come back to that point of those 2 goals just before half-time. And like you said, they obviously knew what they were going to do with that Hayes thing. I mean, he was running inside the 45 and then inside the 21 to collect that ball. Well, firstly, when Gallen collected it, he went around him. But then he stayed going inside the 21. So he knew he was going to stay going no matter what. And in Gaelic football, they talk about finishing out the run. And we know about Paul Kinnerk's background in Gaelic football. So maybe there's something to do with that. But if you look at Cork, the goals, so Cork drove a wide and then Darragh O'Donovan got his goal. Cork drive a wide and then Kyle Hayes gets his goal. So there were 2 low percentage attempts from Cork, which was a free from inside his own half from Grode Hegarty or from Patrick Horgan, and then a sideline from distance from Tim O'Mahony.
Yeah.
So probably Limerick had a chance to say to each other, lads, look, here's what we're going to do now. And I'm not saying both of the goals were perfectly crafted, but like they got to start from a stationary situation where every player is in their right position, and they were able to work it to their advantage. And I think Cork, in both of their situations, they were set pieces, but like taking sidelines, trying to pop them over from that distance. What would Limerick do? They go short, they do 1-2 and work it back into, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I just say something? I think Limerick are the only team in the country, funnily enough, and the best team who, when was the last time, has anybody ever taken on a point from a sideline for Limerick?
I can't think of one. It must have happened in the last couple of years, but I can't think of one.
It's just percentages again. It's the same with the Kyle Hayes goal, and it's the same when you make comparisons to Dublin. They play the percentages, and it's very, very smart. I have to say, it's really, really smart. Like it's just like they don't think of, maybe if they had a Joe Canning, they might let him take sideline cuts and go for them. But Darragh O'Donovan obviously would be a very, very good sideline taker. Can I actually just say, and I'm only thinking of it on the spot here, since that deflected sideline at the end of 2019, I think that could well be the last time they went for a score from a sideline ball. I'm only just thinking off it offhand, and it's maybe a chance of maybe not letting something like that happen again, or thinking it's low percentage, or leaving themselves in a scenario where they're looking for that type of piece of brilliance. Whereas how many times you see Grode Hegarty standing over line ball and he just plays a lovely 20-yard pass across, and they either work a free or they give it back to the taker. So I just think it's interesting that they're probably one of the only teams in the country that do not take on points from sideline cuts.
Andrew Sullivan probably thought about it pretty much at the same time. He put in that comment, Darragh O'Donovan used to have a goal. Last memorable one was Kilkenny. Yeah, very, very fair point. Dahi Fox says Limerick have stopped going for sidelines this year. They're not allowed because Kinnerk is all stats driven. Now, we had a comment there saying that this is all anti-Limerick so far. I don't really see how that's the case.
I don't know how that is now, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And can I just say on that, Shane, as well, like Limerick are like overwhelming favourites. So you are always like looking to think how they can be beaten. You're not just going, like, it would be very boring analysis if me and you just said, yeah, Limerick are going to win. Like what was said at half time of the Dublin Mayo game there, where it was said that, you know, we all might as well go home at half time. So like the show will be over probably about 35 or 36 minutes ago if we just said Limerick are going to win. But you're looking at ways and thinking of ways that maybe Cork could beat them, and then you're looking at ways that Limerick have obviously improved throughout the championship, and they definitely have. Their performances have slowly built. It wasn't a 70-minute performance against Waterford, but it was as close as they've gotten this year. So you'd imagine they're building to a crescendo on Sunday.
So let's talk now about Shane Kingston. Does he start or doesn't he start? You put up a poll there. I think this was probably just this morning, was it?
Yeah, just this morning, yeah.
Yeah, so far, yes, start with your best 15 is 62.9%, and no, he'll be in reserve 37.1%. The more I think about it, I think you're going to have to start him, and that's because the bench is so good anyway. Look at the impact that Alan Cadigan made the last day. He scored a couple of points. He put Kilkenny on the back foot a couple of times. Declan Dalton got a nice point. Alan Connolly, we know, can do something now. He had a couple of attempts that didn't come off for him. And of course, Shane Barrett, he started the game, scored a point. But because, and he won a couple of frees off Paddy Deegan as well. So it's not that he was taken off because he had a bad game, but he was taken off, and you couldn't say he took over the game. Nor would you expect him to, a young lad at that stage of competition. But I think they can happily start Shane Kingston now. No, like, he is a problem. On form, he is a problem. And he had a couple of goals scored in the championship already against Limerick the first day out after a Niall O'Leary run. And then against Dublin, he also scored a good one. But he was very quiet in that game. And as we said at the time, I thought he's going to get dropped over that. And Julie, he did. But I can completely understand why you'd start him here. He came on, played angry, went to town. And if he starts this game, I think he'll only be looking to build on it. And he wasn't great in the Munster semi-final, as you said. In some ways, he scored that goal. But he'll probably come in with an even further point to prove.
Yeah, I think so. He was obviously, he was justifiably dropped for the last day and had a point to prove, but he's coming in brilliant form. It's not like, this is not like, a rookie player who came in and lit it up off the bench, and you're worried whether, will he be able to deal with the occasion and deal with starting a big game. He 100% will. He has before. And even just looking back at the Limerick game in Munster, there was probably a couple of bits of naivety maybe where he took shots where he was standing. If he hadn't done that, and maybe he passed it off, he could have maybe had flourished a bit more on the scoreboard. But as you said, the names you mentioned there, they've Alan Cadigan to come in. They've, Shane Barrett, who has scored, I think, 1-4 off the bench already this year. Alan Connolly, Damien Cahalane in defence. They don't have a light bench. They have a load of guys that come in. It's a different conversation if, I'm not being smart, if it's a club team and you have 16 or 17 players and you need that big jump off the bench. Cork have, an awful lot of guys that can make an impact. Colin Spillane could potentially come in defence as well. They have an awful lot of guys that can make a big showing off the bench. So I'd be starting them. And just John Myler said this, and I think this is the way you have to look at it. So Shane Barrett didn't have his best day, got a point, won a couple of frees. Kingston came in and got 7 points. So essentially, that's 8 points from one position. So Barrett mightn't have made hay while he was on the field, but he was able to ensure that somebody else made hay, if you know what I mean. He did a lot of the hard work on Deegan, tired Deegan out, and that's what, even if Kingston, comes off the All-Ireland final after 55 minutes, having, only got 2 points, someone else should flourish from all the runs that he's made from tiring out a defender. As well as that, you can't, if Limerick do a moving quarter in the second quarter and Cork are down by 6 points at half time, it's too late to bring him in. The cart is already, or the horse is already bolted. So I'd be starting him. I think it makes more sense to start him. They've loads of options. It's not as if they need to keep him in reserve. And as you say, maybe his father needs to have a conversation where it's like, you might be starting, but you have a point to prove that you should be starting for the Cork senior hurling team. You've been on and off at different stages over the last couple of years. I'm putting my neck on the block for you in an All-Ireland final. Prove it to me, and hopefully he'll go in and hurl angry then again.
Yeah, I think it'd be a tough one, right? So it's always a tough one for a manager to leave his son out, and Kingston left. Part of the reason that he left the management team a couple of years ago was because that was, he kind of referenced that it was a little bit awkward with his, having to manage his son. But imagine not starting your son when he scored 7 points the last day out. And then trying to face into him if you lose the All-Ireland, or even trying to talk to him. And look, maybe he's a very sedate sort of sanguine character. I don't know, and maybe it wouldn't bother him at all. But geez, that'd be a funny old dinner table if he comes in and does that, gets man of the match. So on TV, he's there being interviewed as the most influential player in the game, and you somehow don't start him again the next day. I don't think this is a Kevin McManaman situation where there are so many good players that you can really, it just makes so much sense to do it. You've still got quality on the bench. Now, what about the quality of the Limerick bench? Since we're going to be accused of being anti-Limerick again, but the whole point is, like, it's obvious that Limerick are a brilliant team and they can beat you a lot of ways. Well, to be honest, I think they have plan A, and if plan A doesn't work, they keep doing plan A, which is to always find the man in the best position, which they do so well. And then they've got kind of different runners from deep that are all unbelievably committed to making those runs and are so athletic and strong and all that kind of stuff. So we talked about that a lot. So we know how good they are. But on the bench, are you convinced that they have the same firepower on the bench? Just to go through the attacking options from the last day, Conor Boylan, who'd be seen as a half-forward option, Robbie Hanley around the midfield, I guess, Graham Mulcahy, the inside forward, as would Barry Murphy, Cathal O'Neill and David Reedy, I'd see probably as more half-forward options, and then Pat Ryan, who's generally used the last couple of minutes as an inside forward. So, like, my sense is that Cork have a better bench. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I would feel the same, and I put up a similar poll on Twitter there earlier. There's 245 votes at the moment, and I was surprised with the results of it, to be honest with you, because it was who is the stronger bench, Limerick, Cork, or is it 50-50? Limerick have 54.5%, Cork have 32%, and 50-50 has 13%. I think it's obvious enough to me that Cork have a better bench. The Limerick bench, even if you look at the last day, no sub used until 66th minute. David Reedy came in, then Graham Mulcahy came in 2 minutes later. Conor Boylan came in on 70. Colin Coughlin came in on 73. So, like, I don't know if that same faith is there, and statistically, it would, like, the statistics this year will show that they're getting an awful lot less. Sorry, Pat Ryan came in as well. They're getting an awful lot less off their bench. In the three championship games, they've averaged 1.66 points per game, whereas Cork in their 4 championship games have averaged 5 points off the bench from their subs. And Dan Morrissey is starting now. Obviously, he was massive coming off the bench in the Munster the Munster final, as was Gallan. They are starting with their best 15. And I don't know if I don't think as many of the subs would be potential starters. I put it like Alan Cadigan could start, Shane Barrett could start for Cork, Damien Cahalane could start and has started. Owen Cadigan, Colin Spillane, yeah. There's a lot of guys who I don't think you'd have any trouble or any problem putting into your starting 15. But based on what we've seen, you wouldn't say that many of the Limerick bench would come into that starting 15.
Yeah, but the first day out, to be fair, Limerick brought on, like, they weren't afraid to take off the likes of Tom Morrissey, Barry Nash, Seamus Flanagan, Grode Hegarty. Yeah. They weren't afraid to take any of them off, and the bench allowed them to get over the line. Now, a couple of lads from the bench actually hit a few wides, but John Kiley wasn't afraid to bring them on, and the players did respond. So you'd have to credit them on that point of view as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, definitely you would, in fairness. And just from chatting to John Kiley last week, Adrian Breen and David Dempsey, who we both rate very, very highly, are coming back into the equation, but have played like little or no championship hurling this year. So it's kind of hard to envisage them coming in. And I just think even with Mike Casey being injured as well, it just maybe robs another option for them. Richie English would he'd be the obvious one to come in defence, and they've got probably plenty up top. But, it would be interesting. It would have been very interesting if Peter Casey was missing, or if Dermot Burns or Barry Nash, who both had knocks, if something happens to them, or if one of the midfielders has a below par game. But generally this year, they've been the ones that have been dictating things, and a lot of lads have been playing to a high level. O'Donovan and Will O'Donoghue in particular, in one of the most taxing areas of the field, have been playing to a high level and have finished out nearly every game. Cork are going to need a couple of those guys, those influential guys around that middle sector, to have poor games and force Limerick to maybe go into their bench earlier than maybe they would like.
Yeah, and you know what? Mike Casey being injured actually robs Limerick of a bit of versatility around the field, because my sense is that if he got back to his form of, previous to the cruciate, that he could probably be in that full back spot. You might have Dan Morrissey available as a half back spot. You could potentially put Kyle Hayes back into the forwards if you like. Paddy O'Loughlin not being available means that, you're looking for obvious wing backs. Yes, you can put Dan Morrissey there, but I don't think he's like up and down like as Kyle Hayes would. Not many wing backs are able to do that. But not having Paddy O'Loughlin and not having Mike Casey probably takes a nice bit away from your bench there, doesn't it? I think that's a fair point to make.
Yeah, no, I think it is. Yeah, and that hasn't caught them yet, and maybe it won't catch them on Sunday, but it's something that potentially could be one of their pitfalls at the weekend. Again, though, a lot is going to have to go right for Cork to force them to make those moves earlier than they want to.
Yeah, there's definitely injury issues on both sides. Now, a question coming in from Talaman GA, how's Robbie O'Flynn's leg? So he did come off towards the end of normal time. Jerry Millerick did say that he hopes to be right to play some part in this game. Now, his hamstring went as he was trying to get rid of a ball, but I don't know if you can just throw a guy in there like that. On the other side, Barry Nash, he's apparently okay after getting a little bit of a blow towards the end of the game. Diarmuid Burns had a bit of a boot on for a while.
I think he's okay again.
Yeah, but going over on his ankle, is it 100%? I mean, a lot of times you will get through a game, but maybe if, I don't know, for example, Robbie O'Flynn was on him and turned and went at him, it only takes a small thing for something like an ankle to be aggravated.
Exactly, yeah. They just you don't really know until you're put into the heat of battle. The Jerry Mellerick one, when I saw that he was up for interview at the Cork press night, I immediately thought this guy's not going to be fit to play. And he's all action as well, and that looked like a bad pull. I have to say now, that looked like a bad pull at the time. That looked closer to 6 weeks than 2 weeks in my view, and I'm sure we'll talk about it now. His unavailability and the knock-on effects that will have on Cork.
Flash says that Declan Hannon, if Limerick wins Sunday, has to be Limerick's greatest ever sports person. 3-time All-Ireland winning captain is some going. I mean, I'd put him ahead of any rugby player, would put it like that. He's playing hurling. Nosh is thinking of Cork win, says the Shelminator. Ringy, Barry's Tea, Pints of Murphy's, The Banks, Crew Beans, JBM, Bale na Blah, Jack Lynch, Lord spares that guff at least this year. So yeah, Kylie would sub his mother off to win a match. Yeah, that's one way to put it. All right, Flash. Will O'Donoghue is the best midfielder in the whole country.
Totally agree.
Will there be a red card? Says it wasn't me. I have a feeling there will be. There could be. There probably should have been the first day out. We didn't see, was it 2013 or 2014? Patrick Horgan got red carded for an innocuous tap on top of the defender's helmet. I can't remember.
2013 Munster final, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and Limerick ran away with it then towards the end of the game, didn't they? Something like 24 points to 15 or 115, something like that.
God, I hope there's no red cards or anything like that, really.
Yeah. There could have been the Munster semi-final for a few of those Limerick high tackles. Now, again, people think that's Limerick bias or anti-Limerick bias or whatever. No, that's stating the situation. That was the case.
They definitely need to be careful, I would say, particularly probably Flanagan and Gerard Hegarty need to be very cognizant of the fact that eyes are going to be really close on them, and they don't need to, Flanagan kind of led with his arm in the semi-final against Waterford. I don't even think he got a yellow card for it. It's just something that they need to be wary of, and I'm sure they are, and I'm sure they've talked through it. Even I think Sean Finn was commenting on Aaron Gallan a week after the Munster final, saying that we all have to be so careful how one incident like that could change a game or change a season. So it's definitely something that they're more than aware of anyway.
Yeah, but we're not going to shy back from people saying anti-Limerick or whatever. They should have had a red card for Gallan. They should have had a red card for Seamus Flanagan, both against Tipperary. They should have had a couple of red cards against Cork the first day out. Now, I do think that Cork hammed it up a little bit by taking off their helmets on 3 or 4 situations. But definitely Hegarty should have gone for the dunt on Millerick. And there was a couple of others that I wasn't overly impressed by. Now, at one stage, Sean Finn came out, and I can't remember who he sidestepped past, but they sort of went to grab and sort of clipped his helmet. Now, you could be ridiculously harsh and say maybe that was a red card also, but I don't think we should shy away from the fact that, yeah, there was red cards to be had, and maybe that's why Peter Casey got the decision against him the last day, because maybe the Fergal Horgan and his team of officials said beforehand, look, we're going to clamp down. If there's a red card, we're going to go for it, and we're not going to shy from it. But look, that was overturned as it was. But we can't shy away from it.
No, John Keenan, it was in the semi-final. Yeah. So, Limerick have probably got their warning at the perfect time. It happened in a game that they were winning and going to win regardless of how many players they finished with. So they've probably got their warning just at the right time and will be on guard against anything like that happening. The last thing they would want is for the dynasty to come crumbling down based on an early sending off or something like that. And as a spectacle, no one wants to see that. The 2019 All-Ireland final. Obviously, Tip won, but that's the least memorable All-Ireland final in a long, long time. For anybody outside of the Premier, because it was just essentially it was over once that incident happened. So hopefully there'll be nothing like that anyway. But it's interesting. The game that Limerick want to play is going to be an in-your-face type of a game where they're really going to be getting stuck into Cork's faces. And that will lend itself to more robust challenges. The game that Cork want to play is they want to play around Limerick and avoid the physical engagements where possible. So that's going to be really fascinating to see how two teams try to impose their game plans, which are nearly diametrically opposed game plans and ways of playing.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a comment in here. Great show, lads, from Jack Emeraldo. Hoping Cork do it Sunday. For some reason, Limerick remind us of Dublin footballers. A bunch of drones, boring. Cork, if they slip it into third gear, are very exciting to watch. That won't go down well with a lot of Limerick fans out there.
No, I don't find Limerick in any way boring, I have to say. The thing about them as well is, unlike the Dubs, they get more shots away than any other team in hurling. So they will always give themselves a chance. They will always have... it's never a 50-50 game with Limerick. They're nearly always going to get more shots away. So the percentages are always leaning in their favour. So they're going to need a kind of an off-colour day. Like, imagine to say they hit 20 wides against Cork first time out and still hit 222.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
You know?
A very fair point. Let's see now. No doubt Cork are working out a blueprint to try and beat Limerick and vice versa. Rob Downey was very impressive in 2019. Flanagan normally does well versus Cork. Even the last day, he got a couple of points. Let's see any more comments here. Declan Hannon to pick up third Liam McCarthy on Sunday. Last man to do that, St. Ringy of Cloyne. Let's see. We are going to move on to the tactics board now in a second. This Limerick team, if they win on Sunday, the greatest Limerick team ever, they'd be the first Limerick team to retain in All-Ireland. Do you think they would be?
I think so, yeah. Like, obviously, the 73-74 team, and you have, some of Mackey's teams as well, but to win 3 in 4 years, it won't get much better than that. And had things gone other ways, it could easily be, if they were to win Sunday, it could have easily been 4 in a row. So, yeah, I think they definitely cement their place as the greatest Limerick team of them all.
Yeah, there was a comment in there. Do we think there's many fiery players in this fixture? Do you think there are many fiery players out there that could get sent off?
There's a question now if you want to get yourself in trouble. History would probably suggest that Aaron Gillan is quite a fiery player, particularly against Cork. He was obviously sent off against them 3 years ago. Could have been sent off maybe against Tipperary as well. He would maybe be one. Gerard Hegarty can be a bit loose at times. And
loose more than
don't think he's fiery, just maybe a bit loose. But that's kind of the way Limerick play. That's the way a lot of them play. The tackles there's always hurls and hands kind of in around. Will O'Donoghue would be similar. He would always have his hurl wagging in around where another player is. But don't think there's too many fiery players really on either side. No, I don't think so, in fairness.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, we're going to bring up the tactics board now because we've been talking about it for a while. So let's have a little look at it. So this is the teams that lined out in the All-Ireland semi-finals for both teams. We're probably going to look at adjusting them a little bit as we move along here. And I think probably the first thing to say is we do think that it's like Shane Barrett. He obviously started in corner forward here. We have him here alongside Nash at the moment. But I think based on what we're talking about so far, we do think that Kingston is going to play in his position. Is it fair enough?
Yeah. No, I definitely have Kingston in, yeah.
Yeah, and if people want to get their comments in and they think we're wrong on that, please do let us know, because we're certainly open to correction. We always like getting comments in from people who are watching at home. And just a reminder, of course, that we are brought to you by Bamboo, the new stick from Torpy. So please do check that out in the link in the video description. And also, if you want to get this on Patreon, go to, for the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame. Hey, and if you're watching at home, make sure that you do subscribe on YouTube. That's a massive help to the channel. I think about half the people who actually watch the show are only subscribed. So it really does help the channel if you subscribe and turn on the notifications, like and comment, share, all that kind of stuff. Really does help build the channel, which we want to do for the future. So this is now what we're expecting the two teams to be coming into the All-Ireland.
Just a quick one for you, Shane, on Kingston. Whatever about him starting or not, will he be named to start?
Do you think, like, sometimes you hear this thing about players like to have that jersey that's number 1 to 15. Do you think that's the sort of thing that would bother traditionalists, even your own son? Make sure he has a nice number 13?
I see the thing is well, if he's not started, I'm sure he's not going to be like rocking around Douglas for the couple of days and meeting that many people. But the conversation will be, why isn't Kingston starting or whatever? But he could be starting. I just think it's going to be interesting to see whether he is named or not, because essentially the whole narrative on Friday night when the team is named is going to be Shane Kingston has been rewarded for his performance, or Kieran Kingston has kept faith with the 15. Like, that's the conversation what it's going to be. And I just wonder, like, if he's named to start, he surely starts. But if he's not, if he's not named to start, I just think it's fascinating. Really, it's the psychology of it all.
So no matter what, he's starting anyway. That's what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Unless there's an injury, as I said, there could be injuries. So I mean, a lot of this is based on everyone being fully okay for the game. So I think, just in general, this is more or less how we think it's going to line up, and we'll sort of adjust the positions a little bit. Now, I think Darragh Fitzgibbon could easily play midfield, and he's definitely hurt teams from there, including, like, he was quite good against Limerick in the Munster semi-final, but he started midfield the last day out, and Conor Cahalane played. I'm going to adjust the teams just a little bit here based on what we've seen the last couple of games and how I think it will go. I think Robbie O'Flynn will go to the far side.
Just put the screen back up there, Shane.
Oh, apologies. Yeah. Just going to adjust it here. Yeah. So I have Conor Cahalane moved out to midfield. I have Darragh Fitzgibbon right wing forward where he was the last day. Now, Robbie O'Flynn played centre forward for a nice bit of the first day out, so I wouldn't be shocked if he played there again, with the idea being that he runs at Declan Hannon. So would you, in terms of the setups there loosely so far, before we adjust the formation a little bit, is there anyone that you see not playing in their positions? Otherwise, would you go along with what I'm doing there?
Yeah, position wise, I don't expect, like, that's a traditional kind of setup. I would expect Darragh Fitzgibbon to slip out, so I think it will move. I don't think Fitzgibbon and Hayes is necessarily a matchup. I don't think it will be a matchup. But as regards personnel wise, I think we're okay. I think we're okay up in the forward line.
We're looking for two inside, really, aren't we? It's going to be 2v2 inside.
Yeah, and it's going to be quite narrow, I'd say, too, with Jack O'Connor and Horgan inside. Kingston could well play out on the wing, allowing Fitzgibbon to kind of go back into his midfield role. I'd say they will probably play with 5 up top. The reason it didn't work as much the last day against Limerick is because they went too long, particularly in the latter stages. So I think they've probably learned their lesson, and while it looks like, when you look at their formation there, even up front, it maybe looks like they're a bit light. But you have to imagine, like, Luke Meade will be bursting through when they have the ball. Fitzgibbon will be bursting through when they have the ball. Cahalane will be bursting through when they have the ball. So they will have a lot of runners when they have the ball. The last thing they need to do the thing they don't need to do is to be launching this long ball down on top of. If you look at, you've O'Connor and Horgan inside, and you've 4 Limerick defenders essentially looking after them and taking care of them. So they need to keep playing the ball through the hand like they have been doing.
Yeah, I think it's going to match up a little bit like this. Now, I think Nash, as we saw against Tipperary, and we've seen in other days, he's happy enough to kind of sweep around there. He's been a forward in a previous life. He's also played wing back as well. It's not going to be too much of a bother to him. But this is the way I'm sort of moving now. I think Robbie O'Flynn is going to play somewhere in the half forward line. Look, they're all going to swap along at different stages. Kingston might be out on the wing as he was. Like, when you watch back the Munster final, did you see him out there on the right wing a nice bit? Or?
Yeah, he spent most of his time out in the wing, yeah.
So this is the way I'd see it. I'd see Hannon looking to more or less play sweeper, but at times if you're communicating well with the other guy who's spare back there, you can sort of pass this guy off depending on which side he goes. If Flynn goes over there, Nash picks him up. If he goes over here, Hannon will come close to him. But generally, they're kind of trying to hold that structure of 4 across the half back line. It doesn't always pan out that way, but I think best case scenario, that's what you're trying to do. I think it's actually going to pan out somewhat similarly. Now, we have Ger Millerick starting here. He may or may not play, and we'll come to that point, but just for now, maybe that's what we'll go with. Now, the first day out when they played in Munster, when Limerick had the ball, what I saw was Millerick picking up Lynch and Coleman would drop. But then from puckouts and other situations, Millerick played, who was starting midfield, I have to say, that day, Both Cahalan and Cadigan were playing in the backline, Damien Cahalan, that is. And so they had probably more defenders in the team, whereas now you have a midfield of Luke Meade and maybe Dara Fitzgibbon and Conor Cahalan in there, and none of those are necessarily defenders, whereas they had 6 backs plus Limerick the last day. So there's a little bit of a change there, and it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, because Meade and Fitzgibbon are going to be wearing number 8 or 9 unless there's an absolute shock on the cards here. So just in terms of the comparison with Limerick, you're probably going to have not far off that, with Downey picking up Flanagan and Sean O'Donoghue looking to do a similar job that he did on Galan the first day out, when he very decisively won that battle. And not only like for 50-50 balls, but when Cork were coming out from short puckouts or whatever, Galan was kind of struggling to sort of slow those players up coming out.
Yeah, no, true enough. Yeah, I thought O'Donoghue was brilliant the last day, in fairness to him. The Flanagan one is interesting. Like, they're not going to launch high ball down on top of Robert Downey like Kilkenny did in the last 15 or 20 minutes. I would be expecting Limerick to play that ball, that kind of low ball into Flanagan into the corner. And if you just pull up the team sheets again there, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if, particularly down that right flank of the defence, I don't know if it'll be Ger Miller or whether it'll be Owen Cadigan, but if you're moving them closer into that kind of right channel, Ger Mellerick up a small bit into that right channel, essentially back maybe 5 or 10 yards behind the 45 and blocking off that ball, that's almost the Limerick out ball into that corner. Something similar to what Pádraig Mannion did in last year's All-Ireland semi-final. He essentially played back, and when Limerick looked up, like, how many times has Kyle Hayes hit that diagonal ball across into that free space? He does it the whole time. And it's essentially, that's the wing that they really go for. So I do think Cork potentially could drop someone back into that space to cut off that ball. And like, Galan and Flanagan do quite similar things on the ball. They both like to usually, if the option is there for them, they will both turn onto their left. They will both kind of loop around.
And throw it over the bar,
But it's just going to be interesting with Downey. Like, Downey likes maybe more direct ball in, and likes those 50-50 exchanges. He's very good in the air. But I don't think he's going to get too many of them. And I think Limerick will have, they'll be playing to their strengths anyway, but they will have looked at the damage Billy Ryan did when low ball came in. He got 4 points off him. And I think they'll avoid those kind of, heaping long balls down on top of them where possible, if they can at all.
Yeah, and I suppose in many ways both teams will be looking to do that. Like, Tim O'Mahony comes out with the ball and plays beautiful cross fielders. Sometimes you see him at the other wing as well. This is obviously just sort of a guide, and the whole thing is fairly fluid. Like, Tom Morrissey and Gerard Hegarty are going to be out here at times, and that means that if it's Millerick or if it's Tim O'Mahony, at times they're going to have to engage them, which means that, is it Meade going to be sitting back? So let's just suppose a situation where Cork don't want to have 2v2 inside the 45 there, and Limerick working those triangles as they like to do and hitting a lovely measured ball into that area that we've already talked about, this little area here where Galan does just so much damage. And Flanagan as well, like, his shooting just seems to get better and better all the time. But, Coleman is going to drop in. Luke Meade doesn't seem like the most obvious man marker, but of the three there, I see him as most likely to sort of communicate with Coleman, if you can, given the noise that's going to be in Croke Park on Sunday, that maybe he'd drop in here. Or maybe it's just the closest man and you always have to be kind of aware of what's around you. But I think that's going to be a little bit of a conundrum, because Coleman is going to want to be able to drop back in there and make sure he chokes up the space. And very specifically, as you've already said, maybe the area around here.
Conundrum is definitely the word. If Ger Mellerick's not playing, there's not an obvious player to pick up Cian Lynch, I would say. Luke Meade is probably the most defensive of the three players between him, Conor Cahalan and Dara Fitzgibbon, but that role would still not come natural to him. So if Mellerick is out, which it looks like he is, that does pose a serious question for Cork in what they're going to do and who's going to track him. But Meade, to me, does look the most obvious. He wouldn't have been the most obvious one at the start of the year if you said someone was potentially going to be picking up Cian Lynch, but he probably is the most obvious one now, I'd say.
Yeah, Cahalan has a chance at wing back, says Pat Walsh. Jack O'Connor is Cork's ace in the pack. He's grown with every game. It all depends how the Cork players react on today. It's an All-Ireland final. It does strange things to people's psyche. It absolutely does. So that question on Ger Millerick, assuming he can't play, this is a tough one, right? Because I'm going to bring up the tactics board again to talk about why. Now, let's say that this is Damien Cahalane. I'm just going to leave Millerick's name there, but let's say this is Damien Cahalane who's collecting the ball here. I think Damien Cahalane, fit guy, 29 years of age, peak of his powers physically. He is often derided for maybe not having the hurling skill sets of maybe his brother Connor or even his brother Jack, who played last night so brilliantly for the under-20s. But he's a very, very willing recipient of the ball, and he'll turn and go and play those 1-2s that Limerick are often talked about for, the triangles out of the back line. So if you were to say, is it going to be Damien Cahalane or Owen Cadigan, you've got a real dilemma here, because Cahalane did all right full back against Seamus Flanagan the first day out, but Owen Cadigan at wing back against Tom Morrissey completely shut down arguably last year's hurler of the year. So this is where the conundrum becomes a big thing. You don't necessarily, I think Damien Cahalane is more comfortable carrying the ball, soloing up the field, doing a 2-on-1 or whatever. Owen Cadigan's 34. He's done brilliantly to be at this stage. He was so good that first day out in terms of shutting down his man. He shut down TJ Reid quite well. But if Limerick are going to force you to constantly build from the back, to constantly do the short puckouts, because they're going to withdraw like this, like maybe they'll probably pick up men and all that kind of stuff. There's no doubt about that. But they're going to choke the space back here. Then they're going to push up and choke space. So when Cork work the ball out from the back, it's going to be, is it going to be hit to this man and then hit to that man and then across the line as well? Like some of the great scores that Cork got the first day out where they worked it across the back line the whole way across the 45. Tim O'Mahony or, for example, would get the ball and, work the ball forward. So whoever comes in place of Millerick is going to have to be able to take possession, be comfortable on it, do a 1-2, not just be the guy who's looking to shut down his man only, because this game demands more.
Yeah, whoever gets the ball is going to have to be able to not just give the simple pass, but maybe sometimes even, take on their man and beat the man and create an overlap. So definitely, it's an awkward one because Cadigan, as you say, shut down Morrissey. Morrissey's obviously will be coming in better form if they played each other. So he's probably going to be on the back foot a bit more, but they're going to need someone who's going to be on the front foot when they have the ball. What they need is they need Owen Cadigan when Cork are defending, and they need Damien Cahalane when Cork are attacking. That is probably essentially it, and that's not to disrespect Cadigan at all. He's a fine hurler, and as I said, he's 35 at the start of next month. He gives hope to me and you and everybody that you can still do it at a very, very high level. Is there any chance of a curveball of Cahalane?
Another Matt?
Yeah, Cahalane going into the full back line and potentially picking up Flanagan again, and Downey coming out or anything like that to the half back line, where he would be under a lot of puckouts, which he would be very, very comfortable with.
Well, I definitely think this is a huge conundrum because, like, we talked about the Billy Ryan thing, and Billy Ryan is just pure pace. So I don't know if Flanagan's a bull, very athletic, and he's just like he's improved his hurling all the time. Like he's in the hurler of the year conversation. Like, and some of the comments have kind of reflected that. But I don't know if either him or Galan have the raw pace that Billy Ryan has. So this might be So the point being that Rob Downey, can he survive in a foot race with Seamus Flanagan and going out wide? I'm not sure that plays to his strengths. Whereas I think Damien Cahalane, it might be something that he can deal with a little bit better. But then does that mean you never like to upset your backline? You certainly don't like to move your centre back and your full back. The forever problem for Cork.
I'm going against potentially my own principles here, but just something I think that is a possibility.
Yeah, but do you put Downey then wing back? Do you say, do you know what? Every day is a horses for courses day, and you've played wing back before, and you've played there for Glen Rovers. You've probably played centre back for Glen Rovers. We all just have to realise that every day you have to take a different task.
Potentially, but Limerick. I just put it this way: Limerick are going to hit. Limerick hit 20 puckouts down on top of Cork's half back line the last day. So if Downey's out in the half back line, that he's going to get a chance to express himself. Inside, he might not, and he could be put in situations that him and a lot of other people don't want to be put in, and it's probably not going to be playing to his strengths. So that's why I just think it's so interesting. The different, the conundrums that Cork have, and you have to say, like, Limerick will just do what Limerick do. Even last year, when Tony Kelly was going to town on them in that Munster quarter-final, they just stuck with what they were doing. They didn't man-mark him really or pick him up. they will just do what they feel most comfortable with and stick to their own process. The questions are really coming from the Cork side, and what do we do to negate Limerick? And that's going to be the most interesting thing.
Well, Mikey Coleman says, about time he got rid of Verney. Not too sure what Pablo Escobar brings in terms of hurling knowledge, though. And obviously another reference to your hair and a bit of a Ronnie coming out there as well.
Yeah, my hair, I don't know. I nearly, whenever the day comes that it falls out or whatever, I'm just going to get it all peeled back and leave it on a mannequin or something here in the room or something.
A comment from TV Street, at least 5 or 6 Limerick lads getting even better game on game. Lynch, Flanagan, Casey, Hayes, O'Donovan, Gallan, all increasing in form this year. If half of them are on fire on Sunday, Cork are fecked. Jesus Verney has a fair amount of detractors here today. I think generally it's just messing about his hair. I'm sure none of it is meant all that seriously. I've just realised that your tactics board is a rugby pitch. It is. There wasn't a hurling one available online. So, and plenty of comments too about the Union Jack in the top corner of the field. I'm not sure if there's an option to change that. Sure, look, we'll worry about that another day. The main thing is to get the point across, which we always try to do. Just going to look at a couple of other comments here while we're just having a look at this. Downey has marked Grode Hegarty before out wing back. He has. Tom Morrissey is a different player from the Munster semi-final. And I'd say that is true as well. Like, I mean, we are reading into the Munster semi-final. We have talked about the league fixture, which Cork, I just felt, didn't throw away, but said we're going to test out working the ball out from the back, no matter what the result is, which meant that ultimately they got annihilated on the day. Like, do you think that, one of the big points I made before the semi-final against Cork or against Kilkenny is that Cork aren't going to be dumb enough to run the ball straight up the guts of Limerick. Limerick will try and make sure that they do exactly that, which again means that Cork need as many lads as possible that are comfortable on the ball, which, kind of means that you could see a situation where Cadigan loses out as a starter. I think he'll play a part no matter what. But do you think, what do you think? Look, we need to talk a little bit more about Limerick. What will Limerick do on the tactics board here?
What will Limerick do? They will definitely, with Lynch anyway, they will definitely try to ask that question of Coleman as much as possible. It looked at times in that Munster semi-final like he was sitting in on him at times, but then he was kind of drifting out and almost, he needs to, and he does this really, really well. He comes between that space where Coleman's not sure if he has to go and the midfielder's not sure if he has to come back. And I think that's really, really smart. And even the last day, he did a lot of his damage against Cork in that Munster semi-final when they were actually down a man and Niall O'Leary was the one picking him up. That's why I've nearly ruled Niall O'Leary out of maybe picking up that role again. I think maybe in the full back line is probably where he's best suited. Sean O'Leary Hayes isn't someone we've mentioned yet either, who could also play a part. You've mentioned about Barry Nash, and I do think it's important, what Barry Nash offers to them, particularly on their own puck out, is interesting. Like, Nicky Quaid does tend to go long. Funny enough, on the puck outs the last day, he went against Cork, he went long 20 times. They won 6 in the first half. They won 4 in the second half. Crucial, that's losing half of your own puckouts that went long, but when they went short, he's one of the guys that is the kind of the go-to player and can carry the ball forward, and he can risk going forward and risk carrying that ball, like I'm sure you will show here, when he's left free a lot of the time, potential for creating overlaps and making an easier scoring chance for someone else up the field as well.
Yeah, so you could easily see a situation where Nash gets the ball there, cornerback. He carries the ball and maybe hands it to somebody like O'Donovan. Then you might have Hayes coming there on the shoulder. You'd probably have Nash coming again. He could get it off the shoulder again. And this is something that we saw throughout the Cork game in the Munster semi-final. He'll keep going. And I've seen him do 1-2s with a couple of players on the way up. Maybe the likes of Lynch would come to him back again if he continues his run. And we saw that time after time. Limerick are unbelievably good at doing this. They will sort of do 1-2s the whole way up and force you to keep with them. And the likes of, O'Donovan maybe come on the burst from behind, O'Donoghue as well. Burns might come up a certain distance. Hayes is obviously willing to go the whole way up because he's got that pace. So you have to be very disciplined and be able to follow the runners. Once or twice it didn't work out for Nash. In a couple of the games where he ends up getting himself dispossessed. There was a great example the first day out where he sold it all the way to not far from the 21, and Gallan came to meet him and he went to hand pass it to Galan as the two of them were sprinting directly in opposite directions, and the hand pass kind of missed the mark, and they ended up turning over the ball. But that is kind of the risk. Not everything is going to go perfectly when you're playing kind of high stakes stuff like that. You know, it's like there's a lot of skill involved in what they do, and the reason they get so many scores is because they're excellent at what they do. But it's probably like that's not it entirely, but that's sort of like a hint of what they sort of do, and people will have noticed the sort of triangular shapes and how they move and collect the ball off each other.
It's like the Bulls. It's like the Bulls under Phil Jackson, isn't it? The triangle system. Like that is a lot of times because you have loads of options. There's loads of different ways you can play the ball. You can play it in loads of different directions. And they've no issue with going down narrow channels at all. They feel like Will O'Donoghue or Darragh Donovan or Kyle Hayes have no issue with nearly taking the ball, standing on the sideline. That's what they do. They use every every inch of the pitch that they possibly can. Would you credit this, Shane, if I told you that Cork hit more long puckouts than Limerick in the Munster semi-final?
Jeez, I wouldn't. Were they forced it? Like, one that stood out to me was Dermot Burns catching a brilliant one over Robbie O'Flynn. You were just like, oh, that's playing into Limerick's hands.
Yeah, they actually hit 24 to Limerick's 20 by my count when I went back through it in detail over the last couple of days, and they actually got on quite well. They won 7 of the 11 long ones in the first half, and they won 6.
Shane O'Carroll, did he win a few of them?
Yeah, he did win a couple of them. Yeah,
which kind of was very telling when he had to go off then.
Yeah, he went off quite early as well, and it's funny you should say that. When the game was in the melting pot at the end, I just looked at it here. Their last 5 puckouts. Long puck out lost, long puck out lost, long puck out lost, long puck out lost, long puck out lost. So it's actually 6. And then the last long puck out was 1. So that's Limerick forcing Cork to do something that they don't want to do. That's not to say they don't want to go along. They can go along. But there are times when particularly when that Limerick half back line is getting on top, that they're going to have to force the issue and go short and going to have to stick to what they might feel uncomfortable with at that moment in time. And even if there's someone pressing a man, they're just going to have to stick with it because it killed them really in the last quarter. Limerick were able to really choke the life out of them. So I would be expecting their numbers of long puckouts to be going down a bit, particularly at crucial times of the game. Like when Kyle Hayes is catching a puck out, like you can't put the next puck out down on top of him, or you're going to have to play a mid-range ball or a short ball and try and work it. So I think that's something they will have learned. They went all short against Limerick in the league and were turned over. I think and the game was over at half time. I think they decided to go long and give themselves more of a chance. At least they've been in the game as the game went on. And I think it's finding the happy balance now between the two. And the thing about it is they're more comfortable at doing it now, and they're more comfortable on the ball and carrying ball. So I do think that's another interesting aspect of it. It's like any of the great half back lines, be it the Kilkenny half back line or probably the Kilkenny half back line is the standout one. You just, when push comes to shove at the end of the game, you cannot just lorry ball down on top of those 3 lads on Burns, Hannon and Hayes. They will just mop it up and they'll just kill off that game.
Yeah, Phil Jackson couldn't lace Kylie's shoes.
Phil Jackson has 11 NBA rings. Kylie has 2.
Yeah, I'll get you to read out that comment there.
Stapleton is the David Beckham of the GA. Flash, you've lost a run of yourself now.
Well, maybe this one is more accurate.
Yeah, Stapleton is rocking the Wolverine beard well, DMC. Yeah, he's definitely just something a bit Wolverine about him, all right, yeah.
Yeah, and Flash saying, I wish I had hair like Verney. A fine head of hair, I hope it's real, LOL. Is the elephant in the room not Cork's overdoing the short passing? They coughed up a number of easy scores against Kilkenny. Limerick are easily the best at stopping moves at source and popping over points. That's from Manchester U999.
But what's the alternative?
Why lose the same way by just trucking it along?
Yeah, I think they've done the opposite now. That's not to say when they go along, if they can create, if you were able to pull it up there in the tactics board, Shane, if they're able to, say Harnedy is out on that wing and he tries to pull Dermot Burns into the centre a bit more. They try, even the 3 Cork half forwards, maybe even join like kind of a bunch and break kind of a technique and try and get Patrick Collins in a situation where Harnedy has pulled Burns in a bit and he can just leave a ball down into that circular kind of space there where Burns is. They did that a couple of times with success against Limerick, where they were able to create not a man to hit the ball to necessarily, but just an area of the field. And Limerick are the kings of that. They've done that brilliantly over the last couple of years. And that's really just a matter of perfect timing, probably between your half forwards and your goalkeeper, and the half forward making the run at just the right time. But Limerick wants you to put the ball down long, and there's nothing more inspirational than Burns lording out with a ball or Hayes lording out with a ball. So Cork need to know when to go long and when not to.
Yeah, and I kind of have a couple of arrows here. Again, this is just kind of, in a sort of broadly speaking, this is what you could do. The whole bunch and breaks idea. Now, I think that Limerick have seen this before, and they probably will have a little bit of a zonal setup. I have Nash back here, but he'll probably even be here. And sorry, I just have to get rid of that there. And they'll probably set up fairly zonally like that. And in some respects, if we're to go on the All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny, Patrick Horgan may play in there on his own a little bit with Jack O'Connor in and out. And maybe O'Connor will go out to wing forward and maybe give Diarmuid Byrne something different. And I just wonder, like, when you do this up here, what's the obvious thing to do? Will O'Donoghue and Darragh O'Donovan are probably going to sit back to some degree. They'll obviously know when they have to push up because you analyse what's in front of you and you kind of do try and work off that. So Conor Cahalane, he'll probably look to come on the shoulder of a puck out. So will Fitzgibbon. I reckon Meade in general, he'll be looking to take it sharp. Mahoney, Tim O'Mahony, Millerick, Coleman, O'Leary. Everyone, and even Sean O'Donoghue and Rob Downey at the back as well. Everyone has to be an option.
Yeah,
I mean, this is totally one big thing that at club level now, everybody has to be an option. For these puck outs up at the top end of the field to work out, for anything up here, either side to work out, you've got to keep Limerick honest and make them think that you might take any of the puck outs out here and be willing to work the ball over and back in the hope to force them up so that eventually this half of the field just becomes that bit more open. And that's what a lot of it comes back to.
Hurling it's so simple in many ways. Essentially, what you're trying to do is create as much space as you possibly can in your forward line, particularly your full forward line, and at the back, leave the least amount of space as you possibly can. And just what you mentioned there about Cork almost have to, like, you kind of have to, like, almost goad Limerick into thinking you're going to do one thing or another. But Limerick are really, really good at particularly the forwards, at probably standing side on with a puck out. They always have their hurl up as well. They always are. It's almost like an annoyance for a keeper. It just kind of gives even the illusion that the space isn't there. But that's going to be fascinating. Like, if Limerick start clogging up the half-back line, which I'm sure they will, Cork are going to have to be comfortable with taking ball. Everybody's going to have to be comfortable with taking ball, but particularly probably their midfielders, even, who potentially would have had an option going forward. One or two of them go forward on the break if that's the way it goes. One kind of sprints back maybe towards their own goal and gives an option around the 65. But it's going to be really, really fascinating, and hopefully, a couple of days after the final, I'd love to have a look at it even behind the goals, because it is a fascinating. Like, remember, like, back in the day, like, been sitting on the Davin or something like that would nearly be a bad thing, because there's a lot of things you can't see, but there's an awful lot you can see now. There's so much you can see about how important the puck out is.
Yeah, and just to bring it up once more, the other option, and I think it was mentioned in a comment here, I just want to find that, Niall Heffernan, have it heard floated that Cork hit it down onto Declan Hannon, flood it and try and get it out to players running through, feasible. I mean, this is probably, it's a fairly, just the way agricultural sort of way to display it here. We've everyone thrown into the middle. It worked a couple of times for Tipperary, because Jake Morris ended up picking up a break, and so did Bubbles, and they scored goals off that. So this is kind of it. And you would want the likes of Cahalane coming on, the likes of Fitzgibbon coming on. So this is, again, just talking about ways that Cork can get at Limerick. Now, maybe people out there have suggestions how they think that Limerick will try and get at Cork. But I guess a lot of it does come back to just working the balls out in the triangles like we talked, just having runners coming from behind all the time, and just working it through the lines, being patient and always doing the right thing on the ball, which sounds like we're almost talking as if Limerick aren't doing that much. But it's just that they're so well repped and they do it so well. You kind of know what's coming, but dealing with it is another issue.
They're always doing the really simple things really well. And even I was looking at the last couple of minutes of the Cork Limerick Munster semi-final the other day, And like Will O'Donoghue and these boys were horsing into like tackles and horsing into closing down space like it was the start of the game. That's what they bring. Like they just make you feel uncomfortable, and they will continue to do that. And yeah, it's just going to be so interesting to see how Cork try and play around them. Will it go wrong? Yes, it will. Definitely, 100%. There will be stages that it does, but it's just kind of marrying that balance between using their pace and then the odd time going a bit more agricultural. And I do think they will go down on top of Hannon at times. He's probably the most likely to go down on top of, because he's probably the least comfortable of the three in the air, in the sense that I don't see him catching a load of high ball coming down on top of him. And as Tip saw when the ball broke around there, they were able to get 2 goals from ball breaking in around that area too, when they were put on the back foot. So it's just going to be interesting to see whether Cork can. It's one thing having pace, it's another thing actually being able to like show how fast you are. Like when they played it around this year, a lot of the times you didn't get to see how fast the Cork lads were. You didn't get, like Jack O'Connor, there was probably one instance in the second half where he was done for over carrying. It was the one time in the game that he got to open up his legs, because Limerick do not let you open up. They kind of suffocate you almost, and it's a real credit to them, and it's just a ferocious work rate, but a ferocious organization everywhere too, and they have to be commended for it. And the fact that we're trying to find ways for them to be beaten, and that's just what you have to do, because as you say, what they're going to do, and they're going to do it so well. So Cork are just going to have to bring something a little different to the table.
Yeah, and just a reminder that if you do watch the channel regularly, please do subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, it's that button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And if you want to get the audio podcast, go to patreon.com/OurGame, €5 a month. And it'd be great if you could support the channel going into the future. And a reminder, we're also brought to you by the Torpy Bamboo Stick. Get 10% off with the promo code OurGame. A lot of people commenting about Cian Lynch. So if you can stop Cian Lynch, you have that chance to stop Limerick. He is, probably by some distance, the sweetest hurler they have on the field. Like, he's just a magician.
Yeah, makes everything tick. He just really, really makes everything tick. And when he's playing well, they're playing well. When he really came into it in the Munster final, probably just the latter stages of the first half, Limerick started really coming into it. It was the same against, as I said, it was the same against Cork earlier on this year. When he came into it for that little spell, I think he hit 2 points back to back in the 28th and the 30th minute, when Peter Casey was actually gone off the pitch, settled them down again, hit the level and score to make it 8 points to 1-5, and just became more influential. And in the first half, the last day, he hit 3 points in the first half against Waterford. Maybe wasn't as influential in the second half, but essentially their job was nearly done at half time. And he knits the play so well. And for a player who's so talented and so creative and so skillful, he's a really selfless player too. You have to say that there's not a selfish bone in his body. He'll always play what is the right ball for the team. And if you go down through the Limerick team, there's so many of them that do that. Dan Morrissey will always give the easy ball. He will always give the easy ball. Hannon will always give that 15 or 20 yard stick pass if it's the right thing to do. Same with Darragh Donovan, same with Will O'Donoghue. And that's what makes them, there's some of their parts, and that's what makes them so hard to beat, is that they will nearly, like, when have you seen a Limerick player take a shot and say, geez, he probably shouldn't have taken a shot on there? It's the odd
first
occasion.
half against Tip, time after time.
Yeah, okay, but no, where it was a greedy shot, or a very, very poor option, they generally nearly always take the right option. Probably Dermot Burns is one who takes on a shot sometimes, and maybe Garrod Hegarty as well at times. But you were talking about hurler of the year here and an all-star wing back, so, and invariably they do go over. I just think, like, Limerick, there's no way Limerick will have improved some amount from that earlier game that they played against them as well. And there's a lot. Yeah, as I said, there's a lot going to have to go right for Cork and a lot going to have to go wrong for Limerick.
Yeah, I'm looking at the both teams need to work the ball out from the back. We know that, and probably Cork, will they operate with that? It's hard to know. But if you look at the players that Limerick have to work the ball out from the back, number one, Nicky Quaid has been here more often than Patrick Collins. Patrick Collins is clearly very, very talented, and his form is going up all the time. He's very, very impressive against Kilkenny the last day out. But Quaid has the edge in terms of experience. By the way, we're going to rate every player on both teams pretty soon, add up the totals and see which team is going to win the All-Ireland. But look at those players at the back. Barry Nash gets turned over the odd time, but that's going to happen when you try and work out that many puck outs. Kyle Hayes turns, can beat a man. Declan Hannon turns and generally finds a man. Diarmaid Burns is able to turn and beat a man or drive the ball 130 yards probably if you want him to. Sean Finn, happy to carry it out. Dan Morrissey, you'd be happy for him to take it into contact. Donoghue and Donovan, very good, careful with the ball around the middle of the field. And then you can go along to anyone in that half-forward line. Christ, you'd have no problem hitting it long on Morrissey, Lynch or Hegarty. They could all snap a ball. Look at the other end of the field. Do you necessarily want to run the ball out of the back with as many of those Cork players? I'd be happy enough for Sean O'Donoghue to bring it out from the full back line. Mark Coleman, Tim O'Mahony, Limerick, we don't know if he's going to be fit to play. If you got the ball to Meade and Fitzgibbon and further up the field, a lowish sort of a ball, you'd probably be happy enough most of the time. Hernady, yeah, happy to go long on him, but I don't know if I want to go long against this half back line of Limerick on top of Conor Cahalane, Dara Fitzgibbon or Robbie O'Flynn or any of the inside forwards if they came out the field. So this is like a serious advantage to Limerick because they're so brilliantly repped in terms of like where to be zonally, positionally when they don't have the ball. And they're so good at turning and beating a man. And then, you know, a support player coming and giving them that very handy option. Like they're so good at that. And then Peter Casey, the man who succeeded with his appeal from the red card. I mean, we haven't even talked about him. He's going to be picked up by Niall O'Leary if the first day is anything to go by. And O'Leary has a massive task. He's going to be dragged all over the field. His fitness is going to be tested for sure. Not that he's not up to it, of course he is. But like there's so many different things at play here. Limerick have it in the bag, says Declan Walsh. Patrick Collins' puckouts have evolved now, looking for space for the player to run into, which they
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, Niall O'Leary for 2 points. Lads, first goal scorer, don't say O'Connor. Could it be Hoggy or Galan?
First goal scorer, great question. Because Limerick can win this game without scoring goals. Cork can't.
Well, Cork will concede too much. You'd imagine they'll concede too much. What did they concede against 126 against Kilkenny in normal time?
Yeah.
You know, even the Munster semi-final, what did they concede? 222 or something like that. That's actually not a bad tally. If they could concede 222, they'd feel like we might have a chance. Like 28 points used to win every game, but it doesn't win every game these days.
First goal scorer, I got to go with someone like Robbie O'Flynn to potentially break on, because I think he'd be a decent price, and to break on to maybe a run or something like that, maybe, or even
though Limerick never leave the back door open, they always have people back in the square. The players work that hard.
They do. Well, in fairness, Shane Kingston hit the net against them earlier on this year. I think that was probably
loads of traffic in there.
Yeah, there was.
You know.
It was probably their only clear-cut goal chance looking back at the game. And I do think Dan Morrissey coming back in has totally shored up any doubts that there might have been in the Limerick defence. He's just such a calm and influence. And again, he's so physically strong as well. He can kind of play it on the ground. He's the perfect prototype nearly. He can play it if it comes in high, and he can play it on the ground. His battle with Patrick Horgan's going to be fascinating as well. What's the matchup you're most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to seeing who picks up Cian Lynch. And if that is Mark Coleman, which will be for a nice bit of the game, sure, like two magicians there. It's always brilliant to watch them. Also, Dan Morrissey against Patrick Horgan. Like Horgan scored 6 from play against Kilkenny, I think, overall, including normal time and extra time, which is some going for a lad who's 33 to play. Sure, look, with injury time, it probably wasn't far off 100 minutes. Like, that's brilliant going. Who else am I looking forward to seeing? Kyle Hayes, maybe up against Shane Kingston or Robbie O'Flynn. That'd be pretty tasty. Hannon against Hernady. God, there's no end of brilliant matchups here. Please send in your comments and let us know who you think would be a brilliant matchup. Do you have one that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, Sean Finn and Jack O'Connor would be for me, because like Jack O'Connor, like the fastest player in the game probably at the moment, coming up against, like, you can probably be as fast as you like, but Sean Finn just seems to have everything nearly as a cornerback, and it's going to be really, like, the thing about it is I would be surprised if Jack O'Connor is going to get a ball and actually be able to stare him in the eyes. Finn usually makes it that difficult that he makes it a 50-50 ball, or can get in a flick, and he can demoralize you as well, where he can win a ball at 60-40 in the attacker's favour. And how many frees does he win as well? He wins a lot of frees. He's quite foulable when he's coming out with the ball. So that's a fascinating one. Like, if Jack O'Connor was able to get the strong hand on him and, maybe get a couple of scores, the last game I remember Sean Finn being in, any real degree of difficulty was the All-Ireland semi-final against Kilkenny 2 years ago, and we saw what happened that day when a lot of other probably guys were in trouble too. But that's a fascinating one. The fastest player in the game coming up against, the best cornerback in a long, long time, I'd say.
Yeah, and what about the possibility of first goal scorer being Jack O'Connor? And I mean, obviously, if he does it, he's going to run from the wing and in by the end line and then slash it into the roof of the net.
Yeah, and the thing you mentioned there as well about him coming out wing forward, like he's similar to a lot of the Limerick guys as well. He loves using the width. He's like Nocton. He can actually run in a straight line and then start turning in once he's beaten you. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see what sort of an influence he can have on the game, I have to say.
Yeah, lots of comments. Dahi Fox, unreal to see two lads from outside Bow County so happy and excited for this match. Shows the beauty of hurling. Genuine excitement on Stapleton. I mean, it is. What can I say? I mean, we were so hyped for it all morning. We spent a nice bit of time preparing.
It's funny, Shane, you'll be at the match and I'll be at the match as well. The first 5 minutes, you're just kind of looking at, geez, who's picking up Flanagan? And you're just trying to see exactly what's going on, and you're trying to think, and there's a lovely satisfaction when you get maybe a matchup right that maybe people weren't expecting or something like that, and you're like, I knew it. And then there's like, well, geez, I wasn't expecting that. There's another, it's fascinating to watch it. And the best co-commentators will have you told, if you're watching on TV, by 2 or 3 minutes who's picking up who, because essentially their job is to tell you what you can't see on television. So it's always fascinating to watch. The matchups are one of the most important things, because that's what the managers are fanaticizing about, and the coaches are doing all for the last couple of weeks, thinking about who's going to be on who and all the different scenarios.
Yeah, I do see a situation that Cork can win this game. I'm not bluffing when I say that. I really do think that, like, Limerick are more powerful physically. I think everyone would probably agree with that. Their game plan is more repped. They're very good at that. They probably have the best hurler on the field in Cian Lynch. But I do think that Cork have more sweet hurlers, if you know what I mean. I think Cork, like, every one of Cork's players looks pretty, very, very natural on both sides. I think, and even that's the case under pressure. I think one or two of Limerick's players, when they're under massive pressure, as we saw against Tipperary in the first half, they're hurling, whether it's the game plan or the odd time the stick work broke down a little bit. Now, I know people are going to decide that means I think Limerick can't hurl. That's absolutely not the case. I think they're absolutely brilliant. They've been in 2 All-Ireland finals, won them both, hockeyed my county there for the last 3 or 4 years. I'm hurting here. And I'm going to hate Cork as soon as they win an All-Ireland. I know it. I'm going to get sick of them straight away, because we'll just remember what they were like when they were on top. But I think there's a few situations there. Cork's sweet hurlers, that extra bit of speed that I think they have, assuming they can unlock it by using the ball right. And Patrick Horgan, there's just at some, like, surely he can't retire without an All-Ireland, can he?
He can. There's a lot of good lads that have as well, particularly lads in Waterford jerseys. So, like, they're going to have to do something special if he's going to get up the Hogan stand steps. And about the sweet hurlers, you can only be so sweet, and you need time to be sweet, and you need space to be sweet.
Well, my point is the Cork lads don't need that space. I think they're all pretty tasty, no matter what.
I don't think I'm not sure if they're as tasty as you think now. Patrick Horgan is tasty and sets a very, very high bar there. But I'm not too sure if there's any more lads that can score like in a phone box like he can, as comfortable as he can. But listen, it remains to be seen.
Yeah. Oh, look, we're going to decide a couple of reasons each why each team can win. So we start off with Limerick. Why can Limerick win in your opinion?
Just that they're going to be so hard to break down. To me, Cork are going to have to score 2 or 3 goals to win this game. And if you were to look at the realistic goal chances that teams have had against Limerick this year and last year, you do well to find in the majority of games 2 or 3 even realistic goal chances that teams have had, let alone scoring goals.
Tipped ones were even from breaks from puckouts. It's not like they cut them open.
Yeah. The second one would be just the fact that they are going to create more scoring chances than Cork. That's just the way they are. They will create more scoring chances. So immediately they're going to have more opportunities to get on the scoreboard, and if their shooting boots are in, they'll put up a big score. And lastly, just systematically, and how good they are and how hard they are to break down and how perfectly honed everything they do is. Cork are still finding their feet at what they're trying to do. Limerick know exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, they're the ultimate team, really, Limerick.
Yeah.
I think Cork are trying to become that because, when we do it on the tactics board, it kind of looks similar enough going in both directions. But Limerick are further down the road at this. It feels like they're very close to their absolute peak here. I think in a couple of years' time, they may have to look at moving maybe Kyle Hayes back into the forward line. Maybe he'll play 6. I'm not 100% sure. But I think in a couple of years' time, they'll be relying on another generation coming through or a few more. But this team in this current guise, I think, is pretty much at its peak. And it's like the last couple of years, played in All-Ireland finals. They've won them with fairly dominant displays.
They've produced two of their best performances, Shane, in All-Ireland finals, basically, haven't they?
And they have players that have been here and know how to do it. Like I said before, Tom Morrissey's performed brilliantly in All-Ireland finals. He quietly is putting up 5 and 6 points every day, if you can do that. He was brilliant in the All-Ireland last year. Groat Hegarty, he's already a hurler of the year. Keane Lynch, he's already a hurler of the year. And if Limerick win it, one of their players is going to be hurler of the year yet again. Like, you've no problem with Sean Finn, Dan Morrissey, Barry Nash been pulled anywhere out the field if they're not in the full backline. Diarmaid Burns, Hannon and Hayes, like, what a half backline. They're just the ultimate sort of team players. And they've there's no such thing as tie this player down and you're in with a right chance.
No.
If Jack O'Connor and Patrick Horgan are tied down, you think it's going to be unbelievably difficult for Cork to win this game. Doesn't mean that couldn't happen. But like, if Flanagan and Aaron Gallan get tied down in this game, I can still see Limerick winning it. And
they could win it from out the pitch. Yeah.
They could win it by 6, that's just kind of, if either team is to completely flop in this final, it's going to be Cork, because Limerick do deliver. Even in the Munster finals that they've played in the last couple of years, they've just, they've looked comfortable. They've never looked ruffled. Even when Waterford were level with them going into the water break, I think last year in the Munster final, it didn't ruffle them at all, and they just kept going, and I think they won it by 7 for a finish.
Yeah, and even when it looked like they were going to deliver their worst performance under John Kiley against Tipperary, they were able to turn it around. Like, that's impossible to do generally, to be able to turn around a performance like that, and that's just phenomenal. Just on a Cork point of view, like, what if you were to give 3 quick points, what needs to happen for Cork to win, or why will Cork win?
Just because they're not going to get beaten the same all way again. They're getting more and more comfortable with working the ball out from the back. They've had their Nicky Quaid moment with Patrick Collins saving that shot from Tony Kelly and then beating Kilkenny, because, for the last couple of years, they've been told they've nothing between the legs. But I think they've finally proven that they do have something between the legs, and they came through that game. And I think it's a good thing that they wobbled along the way. They'd gone 6 points ahead. It was 22 points apiece, and then they hit 6 in a row to go ahead of Kilkenny. Flopped near the end of the game because they missed so many such poor chances towards the end of the game. They could have put Kilkenny away. Kilkenny came back as they do, and then they went and they had that burst kick clear again in extra time, and they won the game. So I think in terms of a test of character, that's what this Cork team needed to come true for the belief. And they already don't fear Limerick. Like, look at the last 4 years. 2018 Munster round robin, they drew. Was something like 128 to 31 points, something like that. Someone might correct me there on that. Then the following year, later on that year in the All-Ireland semi-final, it was a drawn game. And look, I'd say if Cork could go back, you already talked about John Myler talking about bringing in a sweeper. They were 6 points ahead with something like 8 minutes to go. They should have seen the game out. They didn't. And that ended up being, like, from that game alone, that's what Limerick have gone on to dominate based on how the last 8 minutes of normal time went there. Cork brought injured lads back on for extra time, and it didn't quite work out. Look, obviously management had their reasons for doing that, but that's just how it looked to us. Then 2019, Cork went and bet them down at the Gaelic grounds and bet them well enough that day. And then, of course, last year, or was it earlier this year? Yeah, the Munster semi-final, and they didn't play last year, and Limerick beat them by 8 points in the Munster semi-final. But we could pick out a load of things that didn't go Cork's way. So all of those reasons combined, they've improved belief. They've shown that they have balls, and their record against Limerick in recent years means there'll be no inferiority complex. I think that's that's a lot of reasons boiled in together to say belief is there.
Yeah. Just a quick question for you. You mentioned about Patrick Horgan potentially going up the steps, and then obviously you have Declan Hannon potentially been, a 3-time All-Ireland winning captain, the first since Christy Ring. Which is of more significance?
To who?
Well, it's just which is a bigger deal? Horgan finally getting his All-Ireland and lifting Liam McCarthy, or Limerick winning 3 in 4 years? And even the Christy Ring thing, I think, is interesting, that Hannon would be emulating, a Cork man. There's a lot of things combined here. We haven't even mentioned Donal O'Grady, the 2 Donal O'Gradys, one on either side of the fence, and Donal O'Grady, who obviously managed Limerick before. The connection between the 2 neighbouring counties is huge. But which is a bigger deal in the hurling world? Hannon to be a 3-time All-Ireland winning captain and the first Limerick back-to-back winning captain of all time, or Patrick Horgan to finally get his hands on Liam McCarthy?
Do you know, I would say Patrick Horgan. The reason being, what is the reception going to be like on the full-time whistle or when the cup is lifted up? Do you think the place is going to be more manic from Limerick winning a 3rd in 4 years? I'm not saying they're taking it for granted in Limerick. They're definitely not. But when you do end that famine, I was at Mayo against Dublin the other night with 25,000 or whatever at it, to be 40,000 at this, and I could barely hear myself think. I mean, if people watch the full-time reaction video, I'd say I pressed go live, I'd say 2 seconds after the final whistle went. Yeah. And it was just noise. And I think the place will go insane. The Cork fans were unbelievably loud against Kilkenny. And Limerick fans will be going nuts in this. But I just think if Cork win, the roof will be, the vertical roof will be lifted off the place. But in terms of significance overall, if Hannon were to do this, that would cement his name forever, and not to mention this team's. But I just think in terms of on the day, the reaction would be so much greater if Horgan managed it.
Yeah, no, the reaction would be unreal, in fairness. That'd be a real kind of goosepimples moment. And I think everybody outside of Limerick, and even Limerick people, would be happy for him if he did it. And if they weren't playing Limerick, people would be absolutely delighted, Do you want to go into these player ratings, and I'll tot them up as we go along?
I'll just
sure to be controversial, no doubt.
Yeah, I'll just go through a couple of the comments and we'll come into that, and people can let us know what they think of us rating the players out of 10. No doubt we'll get slated for it, and rightly so. Comment from Mossy Lyons: this isn't Waterford or Galway they're playing in an All-Ireland final this time. This is Cork this is Cork. So
I love the Cork confidence, in fairness,
Yeah, I mean, they haven't even won the thing and they're already sticking with everyone. I think that Galway team in 2017 was better than this Cork team, says Full Court Press to that point. Pure Hatchet says, doubt you, Hoggy boy. Shane, get off the fence. You're saying Cork are better hurlers and faster, more goals than them, LOL. Yeah, but look, I think both teams have their qualities that have kind of gone through. Why is Verney drinking Lidl water and not Tipperary water? Verney equals athlete. He doesn't like pissing blue and gold, says Mark Corcoran.
I don't. It's not. I got this in Spar. It's Aqua Twist. A good 5 litre drum for €2. You couldn't go wrong. Anyone from Aqua Twist, if you'd like to sponsor the show or provide money to me and Shane to talk about hurling, we gladly will take it.
There's actually, this is a very interesting point from Niall Heffernan. Considering the definitive book on Limerick hurling before this team came along was called Unlimited Heartbreak, it really is heady times to be a Limerick supporter.
It's very savage. It's savage, isn't it? In fairness.
Tony Barrett says it will come down to the full back for Cork. If they can win the 50-50 balls, and the Cork forwards will have to work when they haven't the ball, stop the diagonal from going into the Limerick forwards. Absolutely true, no question about that. Fiol says the real question is how much have both teams improved since the semi? And yeah, that's also a point too. Both teams were quite good in there, and maybe Limerick were just that bit more dependable in their performance.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. Yeah. That Cork, that was probably a defining performance for Cork and a defining result for them. It was another step in Limerick getting back closer to, the peak that, probably last year's All-Ireland final was probably the best we've seen them overall in a game, and they're edging back towards that now, which is a worrying thing for Cork on Sunday.
Yeah, my cousin Paddy with his big blonde head says Patrick Horgan hands down in terms of that Horgan versus Hannon. Skills says Limerick Honda will squeeze the life out of Cork with a snake emoji. Hoggy boy and
I love like just Huggy puts over a free and it's, boy Huggy boy. It's just like there are some Corkisms that I do really enjoy. I remember being at the 1999 All-Ireland semi-final and all you could hear we're in the Nally stand. Remember the days when you're in the Nally? Jeez, they were good times. It was just and all you could hear was that 1 2 1 2 B 1 2 B yeah rebel. And I just came home, and then I remember on the bus on the way home, we just kept going to everybody. It was annoying them. I'd say, it's like, "Are you for Cork? I am. Do you eat potatoes? Do you? Or I do? Do you? That kind of that. They're a different type of folk, and they bring some amount of a carnival atmosphere to the occasion. In fairness to them.
They do. The last day out, I was sitting in the press box, kind of the bottom of the Hogan upper, and all I could hear every time TJ Reid was standing over a free was wide ball, wide ball, and it was driving. We were all looking at each other, even some people in the crowd going, "What are these apes at?"
Yeah, I'll never forget Barry Kelly gave some decision against him down in Thurles, and we were playing the match before. And I was like, "Barry, you langer, you!" Like it's just you could hear it everywhere. But they bring such an occasion to it, and they are absolutely fanatical supporters. I'd say they outnumbered Kilkenny 5-1 for that semi-final. The noise was deafening coming from them, and I'm sure it's going to be the same on Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. Look, we'll do the player ratings thing. We haven't done this beforehand. We haven't talked about it. We've no idea what way this is going to pan out. I'm going to bring them up and I'll kind of update the screen. We're going to have all the players up on screen here, as you've seen us do already. And we'll just put a number beside each of their name. Get your comments in. You're definitely not going to agree. You're definitely going to be slating us. But look, we'll have a go at it anyway and see how it comes out. And hopefully nobody will take too much insult at it because, we're doing it for the crack as well.
Yeah, and we're going to do manager, bench, and free taker as well. They're all going to be rated out of 10, and we're going to accumulate the totals then. Yeah, and then we're going to give our verdict on it.
So, do you want to start off with? Let's start off with Patrick Collins.
He's probably a 7 for me, Shane. I'd say. Still has to prove it to me he's going to have to prove it on the biggest occasion, and his puckouts are going to be under intense scrutiny. That will be a 7 for me anyway. Yeah,
are we going to go 0.5? I'd be looking for a 0.5 here.
Okay, I won't go against that. I don't think he's an 8, but a 7.5. He could be an 8 by 5:30 on Sunday evening.
Yeah, but, just his trajectory, I think, is going in the right way. And what we saw the first day out against Limerick, I think it's improved all the while. So I'd be very happy to just go 7.5.
Yeah,
and with a view to moving forward in the future again.
And remember, they wouldn't be here if he hadn't pulled off that save from Tony Kelly.
Yeah, without doubt. Niall O'Leary.
Niall O'Leary's probably a 7 for me, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so too. Probably. Look, all these players are brilliant players. So, 7 is still an excellent player. Like I would say at the other end of the field, and look, we can just jump around if we like, but I'd be putting Sean Finn in as a 9. Yeah,
I'd agree because he's done it against the cream of the crop over the last 4 or 5 years in particular.
Yeah. Then Nicky Quaid. It'd be hard not to give him a 9 also.
I'd probably give him an 8.5.
Yeah, no, I'll meet you there.
Yeah,
he can certainly make it save, but I suppose a lot of the time he doesn't have to because the rest of the defense is so good. Let's look at Rob Downey. Now, I'd be thinking 7 here because he has played well in the last couple of games, but there's a little bit of susceptibility up against pace, as we saw with Billy Ryan. Like, if you go long on Rob Downey all day, a big man like that, young, full of energy, he's going to do damage on you. But, nice ball going in front, there could be problems.
Yeah, I'd go along with that, Shane. Yeah, 7. Again, see, a lot of them do have a point to prove. They haven't, done it on the biggest stage yet. So 7, I'd be happy with that, yeah. Sean O'Donoghue now, I'd be probably bumping up. Sean O'Donoghue would be closer to an 8 for me.
He'd be an 8.5 for me.
Oh.
Well, look, how many more people do you want him to clean off before you'll... what game hasn't he been really good in?
He's been brilliant this year. I suppose...
Okay, Owen Cody got a couple of scores off him. Again, I think the matchups changed around at times. But I just think he's been so good. And the fact that he was able to completely close out Galan the first day, we have to recognise that.
Yeah, I do think 8.5 is been over generous based on this season alone.
Okay. So you're pushing for 8?
I'm pushing for an 8, I am.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. You know what? Okay. I'll listen to you on that one.
Yeah.
Now, let's move out to the half-back line. Tim O'Mahony. Now, look, there's a mistake in him, but there's the winning of the game in it.
Yeah, but the form he's in at the moment, like we always knew he had the potential to do what he's doing. He's definitely an 8 or an 8.5, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd be looking to give him an 8.5. I think there is a mistake in him, but so much of what they do in terms of being able to bring the ball out from the back is down to the fact that he's matured to the role. Still, like, you wouldn't even say that it was a lack of maturity that led to that mistake against Kilkenny in the late goal. He was just sticking to the game plan. And I think he took an extra touch because he saw somebody that he could work the ball out to, and he was just about to give it away and he got it flicked away. Yeah, it looked terrible, but it's a little bit unfortunate too. Now, is Jeremy Millerick going to be playing? So
No,
maybe we have to take him out.
I think realistically we're putting on. I think Owen Cadigan is the more likely to start. Would that be fair to say?
I think Damien Cahalane might start.
Okay.
Just because they have to work the ball out from the back from the very, very get-go. And they knew that Kilkenny wouldn't be in that particular mode. It was more of a concern to try and have someone physically wrestle TJ than it was work the ball out from the back.
I'll put it this way. If it's Cadigan or Cahalane, I would be giving both a 7.
Ooh, okay. Okay. So we'll just...
another is going to start yet another All-Ireland final.
Yeah. Let's go in with another.
One of the greatest of all time, in fairness to him.
Yeah. Jesus.
Never played a bad game.
Showing up on the big days so often. Are you keeping tabs of these?
I am indeed, yeah.
Okay. Coleman, he's an 8.5 for me. Virgin on a 9.
Yeah.
Would you nearly go 9?
No, he's 8.5 for me. During some of the league games, he totally dictated things. I don't think he's dictated things as much in the championship.
Okay, right. Let's start moving around a little bit to the other end of the field here and look at a couple more of these Limerick players. Nash
is probably a 7.5 for me, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd be looking at. Yes,
I think he's a bit underrated, to be honest with you. Like he Cork wasn't his best game against Tip. I thought he was brilliant, actually, to be honest, and I thought he was very good the last day again. Yeah,
let's go with 7.5 there. Dan Morrissey, obviously brilliant when he came on against Tipperary. Had a good semi-final against Waterford. What are you thinking?
It's probably an 8.5 for me, I would say.
Ooh, I'd be saying more 8. I mean, he wasn't started earlier on in the season.
That was
his natural position.
That was more to do with injury. He's the all-star fullback, Shane. He hasn't been caught out at fullback at all, to my memory. But 8 or 8.5.
I'd be looking at 8.
Based on what we've seen this year and the fact that maybe he doesn't have that much game time under his belt, I'll go along with that.
Okay, Dermot Burns.
He's probably an 8.5, I'd say.
God, this is starting to look a bit one-sided, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is the thing when you go down through it a bit, you know.
Yeah, I give Hannon an 8.5.
8, I think, as well, yeah.
Yeah, and then Hayes.
9.
You see, I think he's a 9 with the ball. I don't know if he's necessary, and like he does work and get back, and he had that.
I don't think you give him enough credit when he doesn't have the ball. I think he's very good when he doesn't have the ball. I think he's very good defensively, I have to say.
Yeah, he is. But like, did you not see the amount of times he got turned over the last day? I mean, this is all within me saying he's brilliant, and is he an 8.5 or a 9? You know what I mean? So like, let's not freak out about this.
Yeah. I personally think he's a 9.
Okay,
but like particularly this year, I think he's taken his form to another. Like he offers something this year. Like he didn't get a goal in last year's championship. He's got 2 in this year's in 3 games.
Yeah. Okay. Look, it's hard to dispute that, so I'll go along with that. Darragh O'Donovan, I think he's been a bit of a 7.5.
Yeah, 7.5 will do for me. Yeah, I think he's been consistent this year as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Will O'Donoghue?
At least an 8.
I think an 8 is about right here.
Yeah, he could be. He's an 8 is fair. He's probably bordering on an 8.5.
Yeah. Okay. Keane Lynch. He's a 9.5, isn't he?
11.
Yeah. Can we have 2 ratings for Keane Lynch, please?
Like 10 is perfection.
Yeah, we can't go with 10.
I think he's a 9.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have 9s already for Sean Finn and Kyle Hayes. Is Keane Lynch more important? He might have to be 9.5.
Maybe.
Yeah. It's going to be 9.5.
9.5, yeah.
Like, I can't have Hayes and Finn being rated the same as him. Morrissey,
9.
9. Grode Egerty, 8.5.
8.5.
Yeah. Gillan.
Oh,
See, this is an interesting one. Like, I obviously think he's very good, and like his sidestep and turn is unbelievable. But I don't quite put him in the same bracket as the very, very top inside forwards. So
I'd probably agree with you. And
not
outside
yet.
yeah, like I think he was tied down against Cork. He obviously came off the bench against Tip and was, influential in turning things around. But I thought he was tied down against Waterford again. It's probably an 8 for me.
Yeah, I think maybe. Yeah.
Do you think 8 is generous?
Yeah. Based on form, like he was.
Ooh.
You see, I'm thinking of Cork being able to run the ball out, and is Gillan the best at kind of stopping that? When they try and bring the ball out from the back. And
I think, Shane, realistically now, I think he's an 8.
does he score enough goals to be an 8? He scored one the last day, and I'm quite aware of that. But like he almost missed it by clipping it off the crossbar.
Yeah,
and he missed a handy one in the first half.
Yeah, he missed a goal chance in the first half. I put it this way: whatever Gillan is on, Flanagan has to be, to me, a small bit ahead of him.
Whatever Flanagan, yeah. Well, I'd be looking at Gillan 7.5.
Oh, there's gotta be eruptions, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'd be looking at Flanagan for 8. I think his form is excellent and merits that.
Yeah, I think he's not far off an 8.5, but I'll go with 8.
And I give Casey an 8.
Yeah, I give Casey an 8 too. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely underrated by people outside Limerick.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think he's a class player, and he links play together so well and sets up so much for everybody else.
I think Gillan, there's times in his career when he's been an 8.5. It's just
there's times he's been a 9, I'd say.
Yeah, it's just at the moment this is what I'm going on. Okay, so we've left a few Cork lads out here. Well, we've left loads
midfield upwards.
Yeah, Luke Meade, I think he's an excellent player. I give him not far off an 8. He didn't start at the first few games of the year, or he didn't start against Limerick the first day out. But I think he's been a big part of how that team has evolved, and he's used to the ball. Even the league game, right? Obviously, the league game didn't matter anything, but Horgan and Meade came on at half-time, and that completely steadied Cork for the rest of the game. That's how important I think he is.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. He's been influential this year. I still think he's only a 7.5. Don't tell me he's had more of an influence on midfield or that area for Cork than Will O'Donoghue has had for Limerick.
Okay, Darragh Fitzgibbon. Now, he might play wing forward, but we're just going to line him out here as the numbers have been.
8.
8? Do you not think...
But
he's
capable
a bit of 9.
Yeah, he's capable of 9. He's just probably a bit off form. But he's a bit off form, but like legacy and what he's done over the last couple of years has to come into it too. Didn't play much championship last year. Maybe 7.5 is fair.
7.5?
Yeah.
For Darragh Fitzgibbon?
8 or 7.5, between 7.5 and 8.
Well, I'm going to take an executive decision and give him 8, because anything less than that would be...
8 was what I said first now, don't forget.
Yeah, look, I'd be looking for more, but then you lowballed me, so I took the middle offer. That was perfect. Yeah, you're a wheeler dealer in the making. Cahalan, now, he was taken off the last day, probably not overly delighted with that, but he's had some really good games this year. I rate him really highly.
How highly?
I rate him probably, I'm trying to think 8, but I think more 7.5.
It's probably more of a 7 for me, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah.
And why would you go with that?
We're just like he was quiet. He was quiet against Limerick, so we're basing nearly everything we've seen on him in 3 games this year.
Yeah.
And nothing we've seen in previous years, because we haven't seen very, very little. So he's a 7 for me.
Yeah, as we all know at Stapleton, there's only ever been one 10. And that's yeah, okay, let's go with 7 with Conor Cahalan.
Yeah.
Harnedy. Now, again, form has been excellent in some days, like Limerick the first day out. Thought he struggled at times against Kilkenny. Even his first touch was a little bit off, which generally it isn't. But I think there's an 8 in him. They'll need an 8 in him to win this.
Yeah, I think Harney's an 8. You have to remember as well, he's a lot done. Like, he's a lot of really good done over the last, like, since 2013, really.
Yeah. Shane Kingston, I mean, he did get dropped, but he came on and scored 7 points.
Yeah.
And he's their top scorer this year from play.
Yeah, he's between a 7.5 and an 8, I would say, for me.
Yeah.
That's why I think, yeah, like, you have to put the 0.5 is crucial here. Like, give Shane Kingston a 7 wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
To give him an 8 might be a tiny bit generous. He scored 7 points from playing All-Ireland semi-final, in fairness.
Yeah, like, who else did that? That was more than, I mean, Horgan must have had double the amount of minutes. And he scored more than him. I think, yeah, it's just the form isn't always there. Like, sometimes it's brilliant, sometimes not. So I think we have to go for 7.5.
7.5 for consistency, yeah.
Okay, so Horgan.
This is an interesting one. Like, I think he's 8.5/9.
Yeah.
But it's kind of outside of the Kilkenny game, it's how good has he been this year?
Well, he wasn't good the first day out against Limerick.
No.
Was he good? Was he good against Clare?
Yeah, he wasn't bad that day now at all, in fairness.
He was very good against Dublin, and he's very good the last day out. So, yeah. 8.5?
I think I'm happy with 8.5.
8.5. And then Jack O'Connor.
Go back to Robbie O'Flynn.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we're going to have to add him in. Now, I think Robbie O'Flynn's about an 8.
He's a 7.5 for me, Shane.
Is he?
Still hasn't done enough or had that consistency to be an 8, I don't think.
I suppose he scored 2 points the last day. An 8 would suggest more quiet out against Limerick. Yeah, okay, 7.5, not a 7.6. And then Jack O'Connor. You got to give me an 8 here.
Yeah, minimum, I'd say.
Yeah, 8.5?
Again,
otherwise we're calling him Cork's best player if you go with 9.
Yeah, no, no, he's not a 9. No, it's either 8 or 8.5. He's obviously lit up this year, and we saw glimpses of him last year. Well, has he done enough to be? Has he done enough to be an 8.5?
Well, he scored a brilliant goal against Clare. Did he score a goal against Dublin? Pretty sure.
I'll put it to you this way, Shane. Patrick Horgan's an 8.5 because he's generally been delivering for 12 or 13 seasons.
Yeah, we're only looking for him to deliver on Sunday.
Yeah, I think Jack O'Connor's an 8 for me.
Okay, let's go with 8. Now that's all the players. We've to talk a couple of more things. So free taking, I think that's, to me now, is that advantage Cork or is that an advantage Limerick?
You have to add Dermot Burns into the mix here as well for long range frees.
Yeah, that's true, because the long range frees weren't happening for Cork earlier this year, especially in that Munster semi-final. I think that they happened the last day against Kilkenny.
He obviously missed that. He obviously missed that 65 at the end of normal time, and then missed another free at the start of extra time. But was generally a lot better on the frees the last day, the longer range frees.
Yeah, I'm looking at him here. Frees from 60 yards, 45 from 40, knocking him over. Didn't seem to have all that many difficult ones, and did wobble on that other one that you mentioned there a little bit earlier on. Wow, this is a tough one. But Galan, do you think Galan is on fire with his frees? He hit a couple of nice ones the last day for sure.
Yeah, I'd still have Horgan before Galan for frees. I just don't like a left-sided free taker. It's just something about a left-sided free taker. And Hoggy is one of the best free takers of all time.
I'd take Horgan here. So we're rating them both out of 10. I'd give Horgan 9 and I'd give Galan 8.
Yeah, I go along with that, yeah.
Okay, then what else? Management teams, is it?
Yeah, management teams, yeah.
Well, it's clearly John Kiley and his crew. If you want to go deeper and say, well, Donal O'Grady has an All-Ireland there as well, and Gerard Cunningham was part of backroom teams that won All-Irelands back in that era for Cork when they most recently did it. You could do that, but I think it has to be like Kieran Kingston in his first tenure. I think they lost more games than they won.
That's right, yeah.
So it's only just by going on this winning run in the last 3 games that he's actually turned that around. So you'd have to say, there's no doubt about it, 9 for Kiley, maybe even a 10 for Kiley.
They're not far off. Kiley, as I talked about how star-studded a backroom team is, like Kinnerk is like, it's going to go down as one of the best coaches of all time. He's mid-30s, like.
Yeah. I
You
think
know?
it's got to be 10 for Limerick, considering what they've done. Like, Limerick hadn't won an All-Ireland in 45 years, and now they're dominant. Now, people will come in with their comments about JP McManus. That's fine. But, it's not like McManus was never there before.
I don't know if there's many chinks in Limerick's armour, management-wise, coaching-wise. If there is, I haven't really seen them. I wouldn't give them a 10. I give them a 9.5.
Okay, let's go 9.5. And I think Cork are going the right direction. They generally have the raw materials with the amount of players coming through, but they have fast-forwarded the progress of these players. So
Yeah.
I think something like
8.
we'd have to go 8. Yeah, I think we're agreed on 8 here.
I think 8 is fair, yeah.
And was there one other discipline we were going to mark?
The bench.
Yeah, okay. I think you're going to have to. Okay, well, I'll run through them quickly again from the last day. We've done it already. So from 16 to 26 with Limerick, Barry Hennessy, Conor Boylan, Aaron Costello, Colin Coughlin, Richie English, Robbie Hanley, Graham Mulcahy, Barry Murphy, Cathal O'Neill, David Reedy, and Pat Ryan. And now here on the other side of things, which is the Cork bench, Ger Collins, Sean O'Leary-Hayes, Colm Spillane, Owen Cadigan, Niall Cashman, Damon Cahalan, Billy Hennessy, Shane Kingston, Alan Cadigan, Alan Connolly, and Declan Dalton. So to me, it's Cork.
It's as I said earlier. I think it's Cork, and I think they've got massive depth there.
And do they have it in every line of the field? Sean O'Leary-Hayes can play in the full back line. Like Ger Collins looks like a very promising goalie. He's a brother of Patrick Collins, of course. So Sean O'Leary-Hayes can play in the full back line. So can Damon Cahalan. So can Owen Cadigan. So can Colm Spillane. So you've got speed or ignorance if you want to bring it in there. So there's no problem there. Half back line, you can bring in Owen Cadigan if you need ignorance, tie someone down. Damon Cahalan can probably do something like that. He also has a bit of pace. So I think they're well covered in most respects. Do they have a ball player to come into the back line? Probably not so much. So I'd probably take a little bit away for that. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Damien Cahalan would be a decent ball player to come in. Sean O'Leary-Hayes wouldn't be.
I'm thinking more
either.
playing. Let's say Mark Coleman go off.
Yeah,
they're under a bit of pressure.
Potentially, yeah. I think you're nitpicking there now.
Well, there now. That's what I'm trying to do. I mean, not the whole point. So I'd be taking a little bit off there, but I think they're definitely ahead of Kilkenny, of Limerick. So Barry Hennessy hasn't too much exposure either. So I think in terms of sub goalies, they're both probably in the same, probably both similar enough there. Aaron Costello can play in the full back line. So can Richie English. They could play full or corner. Well, I don't think Aaron Costello would necessarily play full. So they've got a bit. Colin Coughlin, very young man. I think, did he just do his leaving cert?
Yeah.
But he's a big man playing wing back. So they've got guys. Yeah, I think those Cork lads are more likely to step straight in most positions except centre back.
I'd agree with you. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think they've got a really good range across their bench. Different guys can come in different spots. I'd be looking at something like an 8 for Cork. I think.
Yeah,
I think they've got most spaces covered.
Well, that's just the backs part of it. But like then midfield, like Niall Cashman's in there as well, and so is Billy Hennessy. But like midfield, the last day, it was interesting that Damien Cahalan was brought in midfield rather than one of the other players. So that kind of gives an indication there. Midfield, Robbie Hanley's the most obvious midfielder that I'm looking at here. Maybe David Reedy can play there, but that's interesting that he's the only like really obvious midfield option. They can of course put Cian Lynch out there if they want to, but just that point is interesting. And then the forwards, we think Shane Kingston's going to start, but the forward line bench the last day was Kingston, Cadigan, Connolly, and Dalton. I mean, that's fairly top end for a bench. The other side then Conor Boylan, Graham Mulcahy, Barry Murphy, Cathal O'Neill, David Reedy, and Pat Ryan. Now there are lads who've come on and finished off teams, but like you said before, there are more lads in that Cork bench who you'd be thinking, I could see him start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'd be looking at probably an 8.5 for Cork.
I'd be looking at 8.5 for Cork. Like, that's very good. Like, Alan Cadigan has started an awful lot of big games. Declan Dalton started last year. Maybe didn't always go for him. Kingston has played in a lot of big games. Cahalan, Cadigan, Spillane, they've all played a huge games at Croke Park over the years. So maybe one or two of those Limerick lads have. I mean, Graham Mulcahy is as experienced as they come, but maybe his form isn't quite where he wants it to be at the moment. Cathal O'Neill could become a brilliant player. Barry Murphy, we haven't seen in a few years. Pat Ryan's always kept towards the very end. Reedy's used a nice bit. Sometimes it goes his way, other times maybe not so much. I think it's hard not to give Cork the edge on the bench. I'd be thinking 8.5 to 7. versus 7.
Yes, I agree with you for once.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of other people mightn't agree, and I rolled back to my old primary school maths, and I have them all totted up. So the final totals are the final 15 total for Limerick is 122.5 to Cork's 115. When we were going through it, it did look, it was clear that there was a good few more marks flying out. And then when you include bench management and free taker, Limerick are a beautiful 147 and Cork are 140.5.
And you know what? That's probably not too far off. It just feels that they're a little bit ahead in several areas.
I tell you what it is, Shane. It's like there's a thing in racing, there's ratings for horses with horses that they think are going to improve, they put a plus beside them. And there's basically, if I was going down through this Cork list, I'd have a plus beside about 7 or 8 of them. So by the end of the All-Ireland final, Patrick Collins could be an 8 minimum. Robert Downey could be an 8. There's a lot of potential improvement, whereas Limerick, a lot of those guys are playing to that level of what we've given them. They, 8s consistently across the board, 8.5s. They've played to that level over the last couple of years consistently. So I think in fairness to the Limerick lads, they've earned it. The Cork lads, there's a lot of room for improvement, but we're just going to have to go on what we've seen.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. So I think we'll quickly have a word about the minor All-Ireland final, which is on this weekend. But that's probably, I think we kind of have it fairly nailed at this stage from every single angle. We've tried to look at it. Mark Corcoran says, should Limerick have to wear weighted vests like Cork?
It's not a bad show, actually, to be fair.
Yeah. So it looks like we're both going to go for Limerick to win this. But do you know what? I'm actually been overruled a little bit by gut instinct. I think Cork are going to win this by 2 points.
Really, yeah. I understand where you're coming from, and in fairness to you, you've beaten the drum all year about Cork, but no, it's Limerick for me, probably by 4 or 5, and just it's probably 2 to 3 most of the game. And then maybe just a couple of kind of points at the end, maybe when, again, if it goes back like the Munster semi-final, if they have them ground down and Cork are, fairly fatigued all over the pitch and they're forced to go along and Limerick gobble them up. But 4 or 5 in the wind-up after, hopefully, an absolute rip-roaring game. For Cork to win, they're going to need minimum of 2 goals, in my opinion. Can I see them getting them? Recent history would suggest no.
Well, Cork don't fear Limerick. Patrick Horgan is going to do it. I think Jack O'Connor is going to do it. I think there's going to be a puck of a ball in it in either direction. And my head keeps saying Limerick, especially after going through all that different stuff that we've gone through there for the last couple of hours as it is at this stage. I just can't see Cork getting it done. They just never fear Limerick. They pushed them really close. They've kind of, in terms of psychological barriers, I think they've overcome them the last couple of days. Yes, they didn't beat a single team in Division 1A yet to get to this point. But I just think it's going to happen for them on Sunday. I could be wrong, but one thing's for sure. I can't wait for the game, and I can't wait to watch them absolutely rip the heads off each other for that first ball. There's something about it. That first ball being thrown in, I absolutely love watching the scramble for it.
It's great. Like there was a clip going around of the 20 or 30 seconds before Fergal Horgan threw in the ball for the Cork and Limerick game. And it's just brilliant. And Ger Canning comes out with that. There's a bit of how's your father going on. And that's just, it's real GA stuff. Lads just pulling and dragging and just so much nervous tension and lads just wanting to get the game started.
Yeah, I probably said this one before, but now that you mentioned pulling and dragging, I was going out with an English girl before, and I kept talking, pointing out at the hurling match. Look at all the pulling and dragging, and she'd hear this comment said a lot. And after a while, she says to me, "What's pulling the dragging?"
There's all sorts of other ways that story could go now.
I didn't even think of that. Look, I'm such a hurling purist, I wouldn't think of that.
Someone was going to say it, so I might as well have said it, in fairness.
Yeah, a couple of comments in. Dahi Fox, brilliant show, lads. 2 great hurling men, very fair and great crack. Great show, says the Shelminator. Some amount of comments. Did my own bit of analysis. For every 1 hurling comment, there was about 2 about the net under construction. And Verney said, "Savage saved the planet." Effort from him. Shane's a romantic. Verney's a realist. Plenty more comments coming in. If you do want to support the channel, please do go to patreon.com/OurGame. A $5 a month to support the channel and ensure that we keep building the channel going into the future. There's plenty of audio podcasts going up on that all the time. And any more comments? We'll quickly just look at the minor. So that's going to be a clash this weekend of Cork and Galway. So in the All-Ireland semi-finals, Galway saw off Kilkenny 23 points to 112, and Cork beat Waterford. Cork had previously seen off Limerick, and before that they'd hammered a Clare team that were down plenty of players. But Cork had looked very good in their game. I think it was Jack Leahy went to town. Yeah, he scored 11 points, 8 of those from place balls. Owen O'Leary scored 1-2, William Buckley 4 points, and scores from plenty of other players throughout that game. They looked very good in that game. And in the semi-final for Galway against Kilkenny, Rory Burke, he scored 10 points, all from place balls. Oisin Lohan with 3, Michael Power with 3, Darren Erie and John Cosgrove got a couple, and then Tiernan Lean, Dylan Dunn and Darren Shaughnessy scored a point each. So Galway looking to win a 5 in a row there, which would be mightily impressive. Michael Verney has just slipped off the line there now, so I'm not 100% sure if we'll get him back on. But I'll look at a couple more comments before we finish out. If you think that Cork bench is stronger, does that mean if the game goes to extra time, Cork are favourites? Well, the big point there is just even from the 2018, we talked before about how Cork brought lads back on that had already gone off with cramp or with injury. But this time, maybe they do have that extra bit in the bench to see them through. Michael Verney is back. Just looking at some of the comments here. On the Rebels says John Kiley.
I don't know. It's not that John Kiley, I can tell you that.
Yeah, we're in Rick Flair territory here, pulling the dragon. Incredible channel says Flash, and we would appreciate you supporting, especially even just clicking in the bottom right corner there if you're watching on YouTube. Do subscribe to the channel because it does help the algorithm and help it grow so that more and more people see it. And I think that's about the height of it now. I just went through the minors there, so we've a lot said. Do you want to leave it?
It's amazing to think like by the end of by Sunday evening at 5:30, Cork could have a bucket load of titles in the space of a couple of weeks. Oh. Like, imagine to say, I remember Don Logue did that graph on the Sunday game years ago about basically the zeros that were in, behind under 14 titles and under 16 titles and minor titles. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, they're winning Tony Forrestal A and B, and they're winning, they're in minor finals. They've won back-to-back 20 finals. The seniors could win now, and they're looking like they could take over the next while. So it's been a remarkable turnaround.
Absolutely. Look, we'll leave it at that. So that's it for the Hurling Show on Our Game for this week. We'll be doing a review, of course, on Monday morning. Probably, God knows how we'll be looking on Monday morning. We'll be out of juice altogether. But look, that's it anyway. Brilliant stuff as always, Michael. Thanks very much. And
cheers,
keep the comments coming in. Subscribe on all the different channels, especially on YouTube, and we'll see you again on Monday.
Get your ish gain as well.
The Hurling Show, brought to you in association with Torpy. Torpy are leading hurling into a new future with Bamboo, a revolutionary hurley created using their unique engineered hurling performance know-how. Already being used by many inter-county players, Torpy's Bamboo is highly sustainable, offers players greater striking distance and a more consistent balance every time, without compromising on natural feel. Check them out on the Torpy website and in the link below, and enter the promo code OurGame to get yourself 10% off.